Does the Hangout have the blue pill? Oh, there we go.
Well,
There
hey
we are.
everybody,
Yes,
and welcome
it wasn't
to
me this
season
week.
4, episode 4 of Beyond the Wall. This is a
Oathkeeper.
show talking about, yes, episode 4 of Game of Thrones, Oathkeeper, or as I like to call it, what the hell is the Fortress of Solitude doing in Westeros? So I am joined by the ladies this evening. Chooch is under the weather. Has the eye of Sauron, as Viv likes to say.
Yeah, he has his eye infection that comes back a couple times a year, and it's pretty heinous looking. I can't even look directly at it. It's bad. So he's hiding it.
Directly into the eye.
Yeah,
He
you
didn't
can't look
even
at
opt
the
for
eye.
the pirate eye patch or any of that, or
The
sunglasses.
evil senses you if you look straight into it.
Pretty much, yeah. But it hurts
Yeah.
too, which is so I can't really, make too much fun of him. But
And how are you feeling?
I'm okay. I'm recovering from the weekend pretty nicely, slowly.
Very good. Yes, Miss Viv and Mr. Chooch came down to Charlotte.
Are you
and played
9?
some games. Mr. Chooch came down to
Mr. Chooch and Miss
Charlotte.
Viv?
Miss Viv came down to Charlotte, had some fun. We played some games, played some Mansions of Madness.
I got some
which
girly
I really
time,
enjoyed.
which was awesome.
Because I love doing the girly time with you, and so we had fun.
Well, I
At
wasn't
the
going to
spa.
call you out, but yeah.
So, Nutty, how has your week been?
My week has
Other
been
than
pretty good.
being sad about Hodor.
Oh, Hodor. Yes, well, we will get to that when we discuss the show. But my week is pretty good. I'm just on the tail end of a rock show. So, rock show to
Rock show
podcasting,
energy.
that's how I roll. Pretty
There
awesome.
you go. Is it a band that people might know?
They may know. I saw Bloody Diamonds tonight, which is on my t-shirt. And Balaclava. And Bloody Diamonds is now going to be touring through the United States, so you can catch them in a place near you. Go to bloodydiamonds.ca maybe? I don't know. Google them. They'll show up. They're
As
awesome.
long as they don't sound like Depeche Mode, I'm okay.
Oh, no.
Go fuck yourself, Holyfield.
We watched it.
You know
we
who
watched it
sounds like
DVD.
Depeche Mode?
Seriously, Holyfield, go fuck yourself.
You know
We're
who
getting the
sounds
show
like
off to a
Depeche
very
Mode?
good start.
Depeche Mode sounds like Depeche Mode.
Yeah, I know.
There you go.
No, we watched this DVD of this director who directed a bunch of videos in the 90s and the 2000s.
Yeah.
He was
80s
he
and
was-
90s.
80s, 90s, whatever.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of stuff, but there's Depeche Mode, which is one of Viv's favorite bands of all time, and so I've made fun of that.
I don't
of
give
that
two shits.
fact.
30 years almost. I'm almost 30 years a fan.
Yeah. So there we go.
There you go.
So Christiana, moving on to Christiana, how are you tonight?
I'm doing all right. I'm happy to see we
Having a
got plenty of activity over in Q&A already. We've got
Oh my gosh, it's already started.
Mike McCauley says, we have to miss the vivid colored tongues this week.
I know, no pink, no blue. What are we going to do?
He also says, do not mess with Depeche Mode.
I see, yes.
Tim Dodge says that he went to a Neil Gaiman lecture last night and he was brilliant.
Oh, wow.
Oh.
And then he
Mike
also
is right
asked
about
if Chooch needed some milk of the poppy.
Very good.
I can't answer for him, but I doubt that he would turn it down.
And
Milk of the Poppy's like beer, right?
Doc, there's no timestamp.
I think
but
milk of the poppy is more like, opiates.
Opium.
Like it's like morphine.
Oh.
And then Essence of Nightshade, despite what we would think of as an alarming name, is just like to sleep.
Like melatonin or something?
Yeah.
I think more like Ambien.
Mm.
And Mike McCauley is in your court, Viv. He says, hardcore Depeche Mode fan since 1986.
Yep, he's my man. We talk about
So-
music.
Bully for you.
Bully
Also have
for
Doc Coleman
all of
just
us.
saying hi.
Yes. Bully for him.
God, you're extra
You know,
grumpy tonight.
Here is where I think this says more about me than anything else, is that I don't think I even know a Depeche Mode song.
Mm.
Now, I think it's just
You would
because
know
of my
the
constant obliviousness to pop music of any kind. I I discover songs like when they're 20 years old.
Yeah.
Through video games.
Sometimes.
What's the Jesus song, Viv?
What's the Jesus song? There's
The
Personal
Depeche Mode
Jesus.
song. That one,
Personal
Personal
Jesus?
Jesus.
Yeah.
That's the one. That's like their biggest hit, right?
If you say so. I mean,
Yeah.
that's not what I consider their biggest hit, but I don't know. I don't know what most people consider
Well,
their
my
biggest hit.
overall point was really just that I know of them exclusively through comedic references and
Right.
not music.
Right. They are a frequent target. They are innovators, and 30 years later, they're still kicking ass. But hey, on to Game of Thrones.
Oh, I guess we could talk about
Sure. Whatever you want. So, Oathkeeper. Interesting episode. Lots of great scenes, I thought, between, they always do they're Game of Thrones at its best is when you get two characters together and they talk and you see great acting, and then they had other things that I didn't think worked as well, which we'll get to. So that's my general opinion of the episode. How about you, Christiana? What was your general thoughts?
That sounds like about where I came down, is that it had some great stuff, and then it had some stuff where it's like I almost don't think of it as lesser as much as like it seemed kind of obvious that some of the storylines were going to need some filler, and so we're seeing some of it now, and I thought it's pretty good for filler, but still obviously filler, and so I didn't mind it per se, but I definitely did feel like it wasn't quite up to the other stuff.
Gotcha. Mike, you need to stop talking before I silence you. He says, Depeche Mode, the Beatles of modern music. So that's the last I want to hear about Depeche Mode tonight.
You started it. I'm leaving it on that
Yes.
note.
You did bring it up.
I know. I curse myself for that one. And Nutty, your general view of the episode.
First off, general review. No, I liked it better than last week's, I think. Definitely an improvement. I will reserve judgment for some of the changes that they've made because it could be really great or it could just be hogwash. It's too early to say, but I think it'll be interesting because it's going to fix some problems that I thought would be having, since so much of certain parts of the book are inside somebody's head. You can't show that on TV. You have to do something else. So that'll be very interesting. And I will definitely be bringing up Tumblr's response to a couple of scenes. Oh my. People have been talking.
I stayed away from that, so I'd be interested to hear that. So let's talk about some places.
So would you like to hear
happening.
Chooch's overall opinion of the episode?
Absolutely, if you
'Cause he
have those
actually-
in note form.
I do have it, actually.
Awesome.
My personal opinion is pretty much in line with Nutty's. Better than last week, but we'll see. Chooch says, another slow one, but we get some answers, interesting conversations, and set things up for excitement. There you go.
All right.
Very good. So we start out in King's Landing. No, we start out in Marine, right? Yes. So we have Missandei and Grey Worm. A little discussion about where they're from. A little romance blooming. I love the little finger reaching across, almost touching or possibly touching for a second, like that. Although I thought the look on Dany's face, like seeing them together, like was just a little, too obvious. Like, oh, look at you two being together.
See, I foresee trouble and sadness though, just because like no one can ever have a happy romantic relationship on this show because it's and this is not exclusively because Grey Worm is a eunuch. I mean that's obviously a hurdle. But not necessarily an insurmountable one.
Right.
But at the same time, I still sort of see them as not on the same page that way. I think Grey Worm is more interested in Missandei romantically than she is in him. She would be happy to have him as a friend and get to know him better and all that, but I think she is probably less interested in romance than he is.
Right.
That's my impression. We'll have to see.
Mm-hmm. We had again a good segue, the language wise of Grey Worm, learning whatever the common tongue, Westerosi, and then going into the next scene where he's giving his Spartacus speech in High Valyrian. Thought that was well done. And it was so well done that actually after the episode, I couldn't remember that he was actually speaking High Valyrian. And I was reading it, and I was like,
oh yeah.
I was like, wait, did they have a scene where he was actually speaking right after they had a scene where he's trying to learn and not speaking it very well? That's bad. But then I'm like, oh, he was just speaking High Valyrian. It was so natural that you didn't even notice that he was, subtitles. So
I think it's part of what helps with that a lot is good directing and all good performances, and also just the people who create the languages for the show, like High Valyrian or Dothraki or whatever, having it feel like a believable sounding language that the actors can then also perform with emotion goes a long way towards helping us to not just be conscious of reading the subtitles. So I agree. That one was one where it's kind of like thinking back. It's like, oh yeah, that was in subtitles, but I wasn't even really conscious of it at the time.
And I especially like the callback to Valar Morghulis and just the idea, the old guy sitting there talking about, we would die if it's always the masters win and we die, and then he walks in and says, Valar Morghulis, as far as, well, we're all going to die, we might as well try to be free men. I thought that was great callback to that particular phrase, and how they worked it in was very well done. Let's see. So we got the Spartacus speech.
We could talk briefly about just the fact that the way they get into Marine is different than in the books. I mean, we probably don't want to talk too much about the way it happened in the books because they're probably still going to do something with some aspects of that. But we can also just observe that the way it happens in the show is new and different and kind of interesting in that regard, just to have it be more of a, we helped the slaves to take their own city instead of us taking the city, which I like. I like that. I like that take on it.
I agree.
I did to a point. I thought that this was one of those budgetary type things where it was like, okay, how do we work around not having a big,
Well, I mean, they could have
extravaganza. I mean, I thought that might have gone into some of the decisions, and again, not to spoil, but there was, I mean, we can say that there are characters that have not been the focus of this season that are around Dany that have had really nothing to do, and doing what they did sort of gave them nothing to do once more. So it's like, okay, obviously they'll get to some of that plot stuff later, but it's one of those things where you're like, okay, well, I guess we're gonna let Grey Worm, have more focus. And then you had the 2-second shot of Dario, so he wasn't in much of the episode either. So, but
did we even see Jorah at all?
Just like
we saw Barristan. I don't even remember.
He was there in his armor, like standing there right before Barristan's like, have a little mercy here, type thing. But yeah, he didn't have a line as far as I remember. But yeah, anything else? How did you feel about the killing of the 163 slavers instead of bringing them into the fold as Barristan suggested?
It rocked.
Yeah.
It rocked.
Really?
I loved it. After having to see that little girl, yes, I needed that.
See,
Sorry.
that's interesting just because, like, I don't deny the visceral, that justice aspect of it, but a bit like Barristan suggests, I think strategically it's a bad move because, she's gotten by with that sort of approach all along because she doesn't actually stay anywhere.
Well,
At some point, if she wants to actually stay somewhere and rule, she can't just kill everybody.
right, and I totally agree with that. And it's one of the things that Chooch actually asked on his things was, what about the power vacuum when Dany goes from one place, takes control, flies a flag, moves on to the next, takes control, flies a flag, moves on to the next.
I suspect we'll hear a bit more about that, not just for Marine, but also Astapor and Yunkai.
Yeah.
I suspect we haven't heard the last of that.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, it's easy for me to say I really fucking loved seeing those old guys, But I mean, it's a fictional story. It's fiction.
And the thing is too, it's easy to draw the connection because the show puts it that way. Mm-hmm. But here's the thing: she killed 163 people. Mm-hmm. How many of those do you think were personally responsible for the decision to put all those kids up?
I think probably.
How do we know that half of them didn't argue against it and were overruled?
Well, no, I think it's like who sewed the direwolf head onto Robb Stark's body. I think lots of people took claim for it and bragged about it, and then later on, I mean,
but the point is here, we didn't even ask anybody. She just killed 163 people just because of their social position.
Yes.
Because someone did this horrible thing.
And she's a child, and that's the thing we keep forgetting about is how old is she in the book? 14,
well, no,
16?
but that's my whole point, though, is that sort of thing, as much as it feels like justice to her, is really just, it's blind justice. It's not real justice.
Right.
It's visceral, like, makes me feel better justice.
Yeah,
it's not real because she doesn't know that she's actually, for all she knows, the people who are actually responsible for that decision were the ones who got to hide out in their pyramid and weren't up there.
Yeah.
And so that half the people she nailed up there might have had nothing to do with it at all.
Absolutely.
They might have been saying, "What are you guys talking about? That's barbaric. We can't do that." And then they're overruled because they can't control everything.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the thing that bothered me most about that, not that she did it, but more her reaction to Barristan. I mean, Barristan is making a recommendation that would seem to be at least something to think about, and she sort of has that little scoffing moment, like, almost, I can't believe you even suggested that, like, am I supposed to value your counsel when you're, saying things that are so silly? And all that was sort of captured in just one look, and it's like, okay, what's going to happen in the future when it comes to her, listening to people around her? I'm not saying she shouldn't have done it. I just think that some of
saying she should.
Some of her question, yeah.
It's not a complaint about the writing; it's a disagreement with the character's action.
Yeah,
I like it because it's very Dany and it's very Targaryen, and I love that we're getting that, because as much as she's different from her brother, she is still a Targaryen, and I kind of like that. She's got her own way of thinking. She's going to make mistakes, that's for darn sure.
Yeah.
Do I think strategically it's right? No, I agree with Barristan the Bold. Strategically, that's not what she needed to do. But that's not Dany. So, like, I am the kind of reader and viewer that likes it when the characters delve into their emotions. Like, I love when Cersei gets batshit crazy. I revel in that. So I'm reveling in Dany doing this. So
I'm on the same page there. Like, I'm not criticizing the writers of the show or the performance or anything. All of that I think is spot on. It's more just a matter of, in my opinion, the character of Daenerys has made a strategic error. It's still good storytelling, and I like that it happened in the show, but I think it was the wrong move for her.
Probably.
So that's my point.
Yep.
Okay. Mike McCauley says, I agree with PG. Danny's plotline so far this season seems a bit one-dimensional.
I mean, without going into... Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. Gosh.
No, I was done.
Okay, well, I was just going to say, I think without getting into some of the things that we are pretty sure are going to happen later, I think somewhat it's it's intentional right now that they've been trying to show that she's on a roll of, hey, this is working, let's keep doing that. And, so we want to see that for a while, but at some point it might stop working, and then what? And I think they're setting us up for that.
Well, I think she's even got an established pattern where she kind of chastises Jorah and Barristan and all of them if they, first of all, if they dare to question her in front of anyone else, they're getting a stare. But if she's frequently just completely discarded and tossed away any kind of consideration of their advice, and to me, that's kind of what made it feel kind of fake last week. I think it was when they were when they were trying to decide who to send in to the city. And it was, no, I can't live without you. And she's been like cold slapping these boys around for weeks, just disregarding their advice and stuff.
Well,
and then
see
that I just felt so fucking fake, like it was such a setup for Dario to go in.
Well, but I don't think I think it's because it really was all about Dario. It's kind of like what I was saying last week, is that on the surface level of what she was saying, it was all about how Dario is the only expendable one. But what it was really about, the subtext was all, Dario is the special one who gets to do what he's asking to do. And I'm telling no to everybody else. And so I really liked the subtext, and I didn't think it felt fake. I think it felt like there was really an ulterior motive that was driving it without her necessarily even being fully aware of it herself.
Hey, Maddie, do you know how old she is at this point in the books?
Well,
I don't want to
she
send you.
starts out in the books at 14, and I think they said that it's only, between Game of Thrones and Feast for Crows, it's like maybe 2 years. It's really not that long. So she's, but the show is very different from the books, and the way that I can separate Dany from the show and Dany from the books, unlike me not being able to do that with Jaime. I don't think that she is meant to be, she's meant to be young, but she's not like young. She's more like, 18, 19, whatever. She may be naive in some ways, but I don't think she's young. Whereas in the books, she's always reminding us that she's a young girl and she's very young and blah, blah, blah. Meanwhile,
but she also wasn't raised like Viserys or Joffrey or Robb or any of the sons that were raised to, be in charge and to know how to rule and all of those things. So she always thought that she was sure she was going to be married off as some pawn for Viserys. Well, so for her to be trying to grow this much, with this much power, with this much writing on it.
Yeah. And I think that the way that she was raised basically as property, is why she identifies with slaves so much, and why this is her big mission. In a world where nobody blinks an eye at slaves, of course the woman who was sold for an army is going to identify with slaves, with the Unsullied and so forth. And it's one of the reasons why I actually like the change that they have in the series, where they have, Grey Worm go and do his whole speech and everything. I didn't feel like it was just saving on budget. I felt like it was, you can't just go around liberating slaves without actually talking to them. This is the first time she gave them the choice. So, whereas in the other cities, she just sacked the city. She didn't ask the slaves. She didn't ask for their consent. But this time, she's really giving them freedom, because she's actually giving them the chance to fight for themselves. And I actually think that is an important change. And that's why she's different from Book Dany.
Yeah. Sheriff Bullock suggests that slaves are due a long vacation. They should have had the masters work in the fields, work them to the bone, then maybe kill them.
Well, there's something to that. Although I think, as they say, though, the slaves actually outnumber the masters something like 4-1, though. So you can't really completely replace that labor force.
And Sheriff Bullock, he's jumping the gun, so you need to save the highlights of the episode till they happen, which of course would be Sir Pounce, which we'll get to soon. I know Nutty was very happy
Yes.
about that. So
I
man.
could have sworn he wasn't going to be part of the series. And then what did I do? Last week, all I
I
was talking about,
know
well, we're
they
not going to
fooled
have Sir
you.
Pounce so I can talk
Yeah.
about him. And then, boom, there he is.
Well, I thought when he
Well, that
just
made
called
everybody
out
that
first. Well, we'll
listened
talk
to the
about
show.
that. I'll wait until we get
Yeah,
there.
So, did we want to? Was there anything anybody else wanted to mention when it comes to the Marine
I like
plot
just how
line
Marine
today?
looks. I mean, in my head, for some reason, I didn't envision it as being any kind of a sort of mountainous or hilly terrain. I'm not sure why, but I imagined it having sort of a big, wide, flat plain all around it. But I really like how it looks in the show. It's very cool looking visually. Got kind of
Yeah, it had
almost like an
this-
Aztec influence in it, which is cool.
Yeah, it had that great shot of her looking over and just seeing the city and just all the different features like you're talking about. But then they've had probably one of the worst special effects shots where it's like the one shooting up and it has the Targaryen banner up on top behind her, and it just looks like something from a cheap video game or something. It didn't look as good. as
It
I
looks
thought,
like a
but,
fan manipulation.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was pretty bad. We backed it up a couple times to watch it when it was in the long distance shot.
It
Trying to figure out
certainly-
what the hell it was.
Well, I think it was just one of the more obvious green screen
Yeah.
effects.
Yeah.
Usually they do a better job of kind of
And,
covering
yeah,
those.
considering how good some of the stuff looked, that sort of stood out as as not
Yeah.
as good, obviously.
I didn't feel like I minded terribly, but I certainly agree that it wasn't one of their better ones.
So let's jump over to King's Landing then, where we see Jaime practicing with Bronn. Jaime's improving. Bronn is not impressed. That was me knocking your ass to the dirt with your own hand. That was one of the
That was
better
awesome. I love Bronn.
better Bronn lines of the season.
I
and
like
then,
Bronn.
even though
I have a question. I was a little surprised. Now it's understandable that some aspects of this are going to be a little different because they've changed some things, and so I'm not complaining, mind you. But the last we heard about Bronn was when Tyrion asked about him and was told, not only can he not come see you, but he's actually being questioned too. But now here we see him free, and not only free, but acting relatively unconcerned, and then chastising Jaime for not having gone to see Tyrion yet, which seemed a little bit inconsistent. I would have thought that, again, like, we don't know exactly how things might be different in this version, but I thought that he would either be free because he flipped, or he would be himself imprisoned in some way, or maybe just run off. But to see him just continuing the status quo surprised me.
I agree. I
or
was
maybe
very surprised.
he's flipped and we just haven't. hasn't been
I
revealed
suppose
yet,
that's true. It's possible.
I feel like he's
But-
kind of been in the background. I think he's been in like every episode. I don't think it's shocking that he's around. He's grown on me. I didn't have a man crush on him like PG did, but I think, and I was even kind of annoyed initially at the change they made and who Jaime's sparring partner was. But I think this week's episode helped me kind of get over that. I saw more of a benefit to it than I initially did. So
Well,
I did
like
think
to
it
see-
was. Yeah, I did think it was not this particular scene, but the scene where he actually is with Podrick, which we'll get to. Podrick was the one to say to Tyrion, "Oh, he can't come visit you. He's considered a cutthroat, and they're after him," or however he worded it. And it's like, okay, but he's now just hanging out with Podrick and saying goodbye and stuff. So I did think that was a little strange that Podrick wouldn't react to that at all.
And then when Bronn gives him the axe axe and says, compliments of Tyrion, it's like, are we meant to believe that he has since spoken to Tyrion or no?
Mm-hmm.
Because my only complaint was just that seemed a little inconsistent without real explanation. Like, I could believe, for example, that even if they are looking for him or they suspect him, that Jaime might have used some of his authority to back that off a little bit because, of course, why, he needs Bronn not locked up for his own purposes. And so he might have managed to, tell everybody, oh, no, I checked him out, he's fine, or something like that. But again, we just didn't get any of that explanation.
Yeah, I guess I don't remember getting that explanation either. I just remember him like standing with Podrick and Tyrion greeting the dude from Dorne.
Oh yeah, well, but all that was before
Yeah.
Joffrey's murder.
Yeah. I just think that I don't believe in my headcanon for the show. I don't believe that he has gone to see Tyrion. And while he gives the advice to Jaime, he's like, well, why don't you go see him, hear it from himself. He doesn't care if Tyrion is guilty or innocent. Bronn has never cared about that. He knows that Jaime cares, and that's why he gives him that advice. I think Bronn is still going to do whatever works out for Bronn.
Yeah.
And now he's playing all of the fields. That's my opinion.
Maybe too, what part of what he's thinking is that he can't go talk to Tyrion because that would tie him further, and it would be a risk to him. Is that if he goes and talks to him, everyone will think he's conspiring with him. But by sort of nudging Jaime in that direction, he's thinking, well, this is what I can do to help.
Good idea. Absolutely. That's probably more accurate.
Yeah, and of course, Jaime could have been told by Tyrion, hey, get my axe and give it to Podrick, and Bronn was just happened to be the one who had the axe and gave it to him and said, hey, Tyrion wanted you to have this. But again, we don't also see that or get that explanation, so who knows? But
we also can't rule out that Bronn would just take it upon himself to say, well, Tyrion won't be needing it.
Yeah.
Yep. This is for you. Yeah. He did have the good line where Bronn was, saying, how I came into your brother's service, and he's named, I fought for him, blah blah blah, and he said he named you as champion because he knew you would ride day and night to come fight for him, and are you going to fight for him now? Which of course segues into the scene with Jaime and Tyrion. Yeah, it was just well done scene, of course, and just the idea, but that both of these men are, impotent in certain ways. Not trying to pun on last week's non-impotence, but the idea that they both, he's lost his hand, he's lost his sister in some ways, and of course he's on his last legs there as far as being about ready to be tried for regicide. What did you think about the scene? Did Chooch have any notes on this stuff, Viv?
He didn't have anything in particular. I had a few notes.
About you? Yeah.
I thought it was interesting that from the very beginning of the scene, Jaime is seated on the ground, and he goes between being seated and standing and walking around and stuff, which puts them, I think, like on a very even, like, emotional level, like, and even like a strategic power play. It's kind of showing that Jaime will come down to, Tyrion's level to talk to him, and that he really values his opinion when it comes down to it, and then that Tyrion is actually standing and he's got the moral high ground on the debate as well as like the height. He's looking down on Jaime at that point. So I thought that was kind of clever as far as shooting, and the rest of it I just loved. I would love to have more Tyrion and Jaime scenes. I think that like Brienne, I think that Tyrion brings out the best in Jaime. Cersei brings out the worst, but anyways.
That's an interesting note about the height.
I just want to have
thinking back in my head, I think all of the scenes that we've seen Jaime and Tyrion in, they've each been sitting down, so they've been kind of close to
Yeah.
level.
Yeah.
And
Maybe
all of those scenes are
premature.
very comfortable, and I think that's one of the reasons. Whereas when you see Tyrion with Cersei, they're never sitting down.
Yeah.
She's always standing over him, or even when he's sitting with Tywin, he's lower and Tywin is higher on the other side of the table. That's very interesting.
Well, one other thing that came to mind for me, especially given that Jamie kind of specifically calls it out, is just the idea of how Jamie was forced to sit when he was Robb's prisoner. Because him up against the post like that, legs straight out in front of him, was the position that he was kind of in. And I think he was kind of just indulging in the sense memory there a little bit. And,
Yeah.
you know, that whole bit of
Yeah.
just kind of, you know, he's putting himself in Tyrion's place and, you know, trying to look at the silver lining or something, but it's also a little bit making it about himself. I mean, they think they do love each other, but you know, neither of them is going to ever be entirely able to let go of their own feelings, right? I mean, it's so I think just that bit about you know, it's not so bad is a little bit Tyrion trying to, or, you know, Jamie trying to cheer Tyrion up, and a little bit thinking, yeah, mine really was worse. This is good, you know. So I love the scene, too.
Yeah, I definitely want to see the traveling Kingslayer, you know, travel,
The
you know, have
Kingslayer.
them on the road, them on the road
Brienne.
together.
Because everybody still thinks she killed Renly, so.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, the good line which Mike Macaulay also brings up here, the idea of are you really asking me if I killed your son? And Jamie replies with, are you really asking if I'd killed my brother? And I just love the way that he just sort of brings out that, yeah, Cersei asked me to kill you. You know, he's just like, now that you mentioned it, she did ask.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just thought that was awesome. So
So do you guys feel that their relationship is good, that they're solid? You think that they believe each other? Because no one ever said, no, I'm not going to, or no, I didn't.
I think so, because I mean, he, you know, says that to Cersei later. He's like, you know, he didn't kill her, or he didn't kill Joffrey. But you know, I do think that they both, like I said, they don't have any power anymore, really, even though Jamie still has his position. But it's like, you know, the idea of, can't you break me out of here? And he's just like, I can't do anything to help you, not directly, because it's just going to get me killed doing that. And he's just like, yeah, I guess so.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I feel like
sad.
it's good between them, except for that just central problem of they're both in crappy situations, and they can't, between them, think of any way to fix it. And so it's not that their relationship is bad so much as that they're just both under strain and sadness because they don't know what to do.
Right. And then they had the great line at the end about where Jamie asks about Sansa offering a knighthood if someone can capture her or bring back her head, and he asks, do you think she, you know, did it? And Tyrion says, Sansa's not a killer, not yet anyway, which I thought was a great line. Because we then cut directly to Sansa and Littlefinger.
Oh my God, I'm so glad to have Littlefinger back.
Yes. You know, and I read some things from people online, reviews or whatever, where they're like they don't like the choices that, you know, the actor is making with you know, how he's doing the. Oh, I just love it, and the idea that
I don't even know what
some people.
would be.
Well, just that he's sort of just the way he sort of slithers his every line and stuff.
Oh, come on! That's exactly what Littlefinger would do.
Yeah.
But then the people that are online as well that don't get a creepy McCreeperson vibe from him, and it's like he is the most creepy. When it comes to Sansa, it's like, you know.
It's scary.
people say that he's asexual in all these ways. He's not asexual when it comes to
He's
Sansa,
very
and
specifically sexual.
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Mm.
and but that was just a wonderful scene between the two of them. What would you have on that, Christiana?
I shouted with joy at the line, "What do you want?" Everything.
Everything.
That's so
I'd
great.
risk,
Oh my
I'd
god.
risk everything to get what I want.
I knew that I missed Littlefinger when we weren't seeing him, but I'm just so happy to have him back because I think he's such a great character. I mean, obviously not a nice guy, but I love his whole shtick. This whole thing of like, gotta risk things to I would risk everything to get what I want. Well, what do you want? Everything.
He's
And
so
so
James Bond in this. He's like,
it's a parallel to what Varys said about him, which is that he would see the whole kingdom burn if he could rule the ashes, right?
Yeah.
It's because that is totally what he would do.
Yeah.
And the thing is, it's like he almost he really, for all we've talked about how like Varys wants to serve the realm depending on what his, whatever his definition of serving the realm is, right? Whereas Littlefinger is totally all about, he couldn't care less what happens to the realm except that he wants himself to become the leader of it. Like everything else is secondary to that. And I just love that he has these long plans and, that he is deliberately encouraging Sansa to like, come on, think through it. Tell me what you think happened. Who did it? Do you think Tyrion was involved? Well, maybe he was, maybe he wasn't. And he's
Right.
grooming her, which is a perfect follow-up to that whole Tyrion line of she's not a killer. Not yet, anyway. It's like, well, if anything would make her one, hanging out with Littlefinger more might. And I think that's so fun. And the whole bit of, she's saying, well, if your friends are so predictable, that's not very much like you. And he's like, well, I don't want friends like me. And he just says it like, well, obviously not. I mean, I wouldn't want it. I'm so unpredictable and untrustworthy. I wouldn't want my friends to be like that. I wouldn't be able to trust them.
Yep. And I like the way you were talking, Christiana, about the way he's sort of, getting off a little bit, or just that's his form of intimacy, is like, like when he talked to Roz and he had complete power over her and he would just share little things with her, and that was sort of his way of and it's carrying over with Sansa, that he's, instructing her in who he is, and that's his form of intimacy with her, and in this case of being very happy that she's learning about how, the machinations work, and he's really in control and that sort of thing. So
was it maybe season 2 or season 1 where I think it's Varys who says something about if the Iron Throne ends up being a pile of ashes, Littlefinger wants to be on top of those ashes.
Well,
what Christiana said is the line, yeah.
It was in season 2, and it was Varys talking to, was it Olenna? No, I don't remember who he was talking to, but
I think he was talking.
Yeah,
to
I think
Olenna,
it was when they were plotting to get Sansa away from him by marrying her to Loras. Was when they were having this conversation, and what he said is that he would see the kingdom burn if he could be king of the ashes.
Yeah.
Oh man,
I just love it.
he totally would. He's such a great bad guy, but in a totally different way than Joffrey.
I love him for it. He's a smart bad guy.
Well, and different even from Tywin
in
that respect too.
Very selfish.
Mm-hmm.
Did Chooch have any notes about this scene?
He just said, and I don't think that we should answer these things, but he says, Baelish and Sansa, why put the poison in a stone on the necklace? How did it get from there to Joffrey? And then,
we can
we
talk
don't have
about
to
that.
confirm it, but what we can say is
We haven't gotten
Knowing what you know now, go rewatch episode 2, and you'll.
Right, and he says, Olenna admits to having Joffrey killed. Yay, I was right. So that was more King's Landing than.
And Olenna kind of plays with Marjorie's necklace.
Yeah. Let it. I mean, I think that was like. I mean, I know that I had to have signaled Chooch because I rewound that scene with her touching the necklace and counting stones and seeing if it showed that one all the way over on that side or not. And you know, so when she reached out, I think that was an easy callback for people that didn't know. Like in the book, it was actually the hairnet that has different stones in it, and that the stone was in Sansa's hairnet and. It was taken, and that was where the poison was. But
and Sansa actually discovers that one of the stones is missing right before she leaves King's Landing, and she's like, "Huh." So like Sansa actually pieces stuff together. It's not just handed her on a platter. I really thought last week when Littlefinger smashed the necklace, I was like, "Oh, so that was just." Nothing. That wasn't the poison. Like I thought for some reason because he smashed it that they were getting rid of that idea.
Yeah.
And then it turns out that they didn't. And I was like, oh,
No.
okay.
I think
when you broke the necklace, I thought they were going to do what I was hoping is that they would actually change it and it was going to be the pie, and then might even be a different killer and stuff. But then they went down this road, and I'll get to my big beef in a moment when we get to Olenna's scene. But go ahead, Christiana.
I think smashing the necklace was supposed to show us that the gems weren't real because of how easily they broke, but I agree it wasn't very clear. I think that was the intent of him smashing the gem like that against the wood is supposed to be saying if these were real gems they wouldn't break this easy, so the necklace was a fake.
Yeah.
That's but I agree they didn't really drive that home, so it wasn't clear that was what was happening.
Yep. But you know, at the end of that scene, Littlefinger, you know, mentions that he has friends that, you know, helped him, however he worded it, and then I had one of the good scene transitions where the dialogue didn't end until it got, you know, where he's talking about his friends, and then you see Olenna and Marjorie walking with one of the great meta lines of any Game of Thrones episode, where Olenna says, basically, you know, if I have to walk down in these damn gardens one more time, I'm going to throw myself off the cliffs, which is hilarious because, you know, that's basically 90% of the scenes we get with her are in those damn gardens. So I just thought that was a great meta line in there. But yeah, so we have, again, like we've talked about before, point of view in the books. You don't get Olenna and Marjorie talking to each other, and you get sort of a secondary confirmation, or at least intimation that you know, she was responsible for Joffrey's death, and you know, so again, some of the book stuff, and even George in an interview I read, or at least a part of in Rolling Stone, where he was saying, he said, well, you know, the current book view on what happened to Joffrey is this, but there's nothing to say that that's the complete truth. So interesting that, you know, don't know if the show's going down a little bit further down just to say, hey, this is it, but they still, you know, it was sort of the idea of, you know, Littlefinger saying, I had help, and her saying, you think I was going to let you marry that beast, but not, you know, and the toying with the necklace. So you know, putting the two and two together is obvious what's there, but could there be other things?
The bigger surprise for me in that scene, well, I mean, you know, I've read the books, so obviously I, you know, was not shocked by Olenna, but again, because we don't get this point of view in the books, we're never completely sure. But the show, at the very least, seems to be really confirming that Marjorie was not in on the plan at all. They didn't tell her anything about it. And so that I was a little surprised by. I would have thought that if the Tyrells were so instrumentally involved in this plot that she would know. If only to say, might want to not share Joffrey's wine. You know, I mean,
I do have a major problem with the whole thing of it being the necklace, is that your entire assassination plot rests on the idea that this girl is going to wear this necklace to the wedding, when all you have is evidence, or is, reference point, is that she got this. They never mention, I'll wear it to a big public event. He just says, I would love you to wear it, and she says, okay, I'll wear it. And it's like, that is the whole thing of her getting this necklace in, and then, that's what you're hinging this whole plot. And if she hadn't been wearing the necklace, what would have happened then?
But I mean, can you make the
I-
same argument with the hairnet in the book?
yeah.
Oh,
I
yeah,
mean, well,
they gave it to her specifically for the
Well,
wedding.
isn't there a scene, I could be wrong about this, isn't there a scene before the wedding when they're getting ready where, or is it the same? I was thinking there was a scene where Olenna sees it before.
She
well,
does.
So there may have been time.
So-
may have been time to do something else, but it was like.
mhm.
I
Well,
don't know.
Sheriff Bullock in Q&A actually echoes this too, saying, I'm unclear why Littlefinger put poison in the necklace and had Dantos give the necklace to Sansa so Lady Olenna could take the stone and poison Joffrey, when Olenna could have simply brought the poison with her. Seems like an overly complicated plot. To my mind, it's a very simple answer, which is to say, Olenna doesn't want to get caught with poison on her.
Right.
Yeah. If anyone is going to get caught sneaking poison into a royal wedding, how about it be Sansa and not Olenna?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this goes more towards making Tyrion the target and making Sansa a fugitive, which puts her in a different position. Instead of just being a hostage, she's now a fugitive.
Well, I suspected that was all. I think that was all Littlefinger. Like
Oh,
the
I agree,
Tyrells
that
could have
is
cared
Littlefinger,
less
yeah.
whether Sansa was imprisoned or
Agreed.
not. I think Littlefinger was basically probably just made that a condition of his help, is that Sansa get to escape.
Right. And then one thing that I you'll have to confirm this because I didn't rewind a whole bunch of times, but it seems like when Marjorie took the cup and put it on the table, that Olenna would have had to have gotten up and walked over while the pie stuff was going on to actually put it. It wasn't on the
I
table.
think she
was
put it
sitting
in
at.
the carafe,
So-
not the glass, because if you watch, this is one of those things where it's so subtle that you almost can't be sure that's really what they intended. But if you're watching the scene where she has just played with Sansa's necklace, she then walks along the whole feast table right in front of Joffrey and Marjorie, and as she passes the glass carafe that he's filling his cup from, you hear on the soundtrack very faintly, plink. Now, is that intentional? Maybe not. It might have just been a random sound that happened. But I believe, regardless of whether the sound was intentional or not, that's when it happened. I think she didn't put it in the cup. She put it in the carafe that the cup was poured from.
And another reason that I was hoping it would be in the pie, it would be a whole lot more direct to, have, if somebody was involved, to have a specific piece of pie given to, Joffrey, handed to him.
But-
and I'm sure there's some custom where the queen feeds the king the first bite of pie, so she would not have gotten any pie before,
But
he turned it up,
how
right?
would you get it in a specific piece of the pie compared
That
to how
requires
easy it is?
the cooks
Joffrey
to-
has his own little wine carafe. It's sitting right there. Nobody else is going to drink from it. Versus this whole giant pie that in theory is going to get split and shared amongst 500 people.
Hey
like-
guys.
I don't know.
Hey guys, remember
Yeah.
the scene in the Lord Commander's room with Jaime and Joffrey being such a little dickhead, and they're talking
sure.
about plans for the wedding and who's going to be guarding Joffrey and who's going to be guarding Tom, and then Joffrey throws off this, I'm not expecting any trouble. He just kind of throws it away, and then he starts making fun of Jaime, and now he's dead. Isn't that cool?
Yep.
Does that make you happy?
Yeah. Well, it makes everybody happy. Everybody hated him. Dude,
I
cube
love
acting from
Joffrey. I was
season.
happy. I enjoyed every moment this season. I don't know how
Yeah.
that happened.
He's a fantastic actor. That's how it
Yeah,
happened. He's
I know.
really talented.
Mike McCauley says I was hoping Tywin. I'm sorry, that thing moved before I
God, don't
hate
let
when
it
that
move.
happens. I was hoping that Tywin would have some hand in the murder, realizing that Joffrey is just a bad seed, especially the talk he had shortly after with Tommen regarding the qualities of a good leader. I'm sure he did not mind, overall that Joffrey was killed,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. I think the reason that it couldn't have been Tywin is that I think as much as Tywin might recognize the beneficial potential in having Joffrey out of the way, I don't think he would ever actually arrange for it to happen himself.
I
Because
agree.
if nothing else, think how much he hates Tyrion. If
And
he was
Tyrion's
willing to have a Lannister killed, why would he have not had Tyrion killed a long time ago?
exactly. I totally agree. I don't think Tywin was responsible.
yeah.
I mean,
Douglas Lawson said.
wouldn't put it past him otherwise, but
Douglas
I've
Lawson
had that
said,
thought
still having a
myself.
hard time believing that Littlefinger was responsible. Grandma Tyrella, yes, but not Littlefinger. I have no trouble believing that Littlefinger would be directly, because he wasn't there, so perfect
That,
alibi. Just
yeah.
see, because I think that the whole plan. First of all, it's one thing to say, well, did he really help, or did he just know it was going to happen? Because clearly he knew it was going to happen. I mean, he sent Santos to bring Sansa out right as it was going on. But I think the other aspect of it, his involvement in the plan is not just like they're putting the poison in. He's providing the scapegoat, right? Because even if they didn't accuse Tyrion, the fact that Sansa fled the scene would have made her the target. So the thing is, if Joffrey's going to get poisoned to death, someone has to take the fall for it, right? They can't just leave it a mystery and say, we'll never know, I guess. Someone's going to have to take the fall. So I think part of Littlefinger's involvement in that was arranging for there to be someone to take the blame.
Yeah. And it makes sense as co-conspirators also. You wouldn't, I mean, Olenna wouldn't go and say, yeah, sure, Peter, you go take off on the boat, and then I'll smuggle in poison, and then I'll get it in his wine glass, and I'll take full accountability. No, she's going to want some other hooker to toe the line with her, too. She doesn't want to lose her head or anything else that she's gained, or God forbid, any good position that Marjorie may be seeming to be sitting in.
Yeah, I think the thing is, Littlefinger has tried to get Sansa out of there before.
Right.
She's refused to go with him. He needs to make her a fugitive so she has no choice but to go with him.
Yep.
And that is his whole desire for this.
Yeah.
He doesn't care if Joffrey's king or not. Like, I don't think he cares at that point. He's not so interested. Olenna wants Marjorie to be queen, but doesn't trust Joffrey. So she wants him out of the way. She definitely has motive, and she's smart enough to put this whole thing together. I don't think that Olenna wanted Tyrion to take the blame, but she's totally fine with Sansa becoming a fugitive because the girl's going to be leaving anyway, and Littlefinger's going to get her out of there. And so she's not too worried about that.
Well, and her
Nobody
days
could have
are
known.
numbered. Sorry.
Yeah,
go
and
ahead.
nobody could have known that Tyrion would become the cupbearer,
Yeah.
And if that happens, happy accident for Littlefinger. And then you've got all of that working out. My big grumble with all of this is, where does she tell Marjorie this information?
I know.
Exactly where she told Marjorie not to make a joke about having dead sparrows around her neck.
Yeah.
And I think we've got a comment in the Q&A that actually answers a couple of things here too from Sheriff Bullock. First off, he wants to call Christiana his guru. But I like this. Do you think the King's Guard were patting down guests at the wedding to the extent that they closely examine a necklace? Is the lion's arch staff? Well, it moved. Where'd it go?
With TSA employees.
TSA employees, sorry.
So,
Thank you.
I would say that they were absolutely checking people for weapons.
And they
They
talk
didn't
about it in the
probably
book.
pay any attention to a necklace because, first of all, everybody's going to be wearing jewelry of some kind, and at a superficial inspection, nobody would be able to tell anything about it. That's why that was the whole point. I mean,
And nobody's going to
Sansa was
notice if
wearing it
Sansa's
and didn't
wearing
realize
fake
anything was
jewels.
up.
Right,
So-
but nobody's going to notice if Sansa's wearing fake jewels, but they would notice if the Queen of Thorns, if the matriarch of House Tyrell was wearing costume jewelry to her granddaughter's wedding. That might make them go, what is up with that?
I mean, if to put it in the same kind of verbiage, TSA employees are not gemologists, and they wouldn't necessarily know a stone.
No, but the
from a fake
King's
stone.
Guard would know, and the other ladies would know.
Would they? I don't know. Why wouldn't Sansa know then?
Because she's stupid. She hasn't grown enough to understand.
I agree that it's certainly true that if anybody thought that it was fake, they wouldn't bat an eye because it's Sansa. I agree there.
Yeah.
I don't know that it's obvious that they would be able to tell that. But at the same time, I do think that the Kingsguard absolutely would have been checking people for weapons, and so that's another reason why. Because there's always the possibility that something would slip and that there would be a problem. Maybe the stone, a stone falls off too soon, and someone picks it up and says, "Hey, this is weird." And you never know, and that's part of why it had to be Sansa to bring it in, because if anyone does find out what's going on, it's her that's implicated and not the Tyrells.
Right.
Yep.
Couple more comments. Wanted to get out before you continue. And first, Mike McCauley agrees with something I was bringing up last episode or this episode, whatever. I watched that pie scene many times, and she clearly feeds him the pie before he drinks the wine. That had me originally thinking that Marjorie may have been involved. I didn't know if that was making her involved, but I was hoping it was pie because he drank the wine and then he stopped, and then right after the first bite of pie, he starts with his coughing, which prompted him to drink the wine. But I was like, well, maybe it wasn't that it was just dry and caused him to cough, but that was actually the start of the poisoning, and it just progressed from there.
He thought the pie was dry because his throat was already starting to close from having drunk the poisoned wine.
Yes.
But I think the pie, rather than pigeon pie, was red herring pie.
Nice.
It was cinnamon pie. It was pure cinnamon, and he started to eat it, and
He couldn't swallow.
he couldn't swallow.
Joffrey cannot pass the cinnamon challenge.
And Sheriff Bullock, go ahead, Christian.
I was going to say another good point that's been up there for a little while is although Tyrion is a very satisfying target for Cersei, one would think she and Tywin would want to know who actually murdered Joffrey should there be a plot to assassinate other Lannisters like Tommen. I tend to agree as far as Tywin is concerned. I feel like Cersei is just entirely irrational on this matter. I don't think she is even willing to consider that it could possibly be anyone other than Tyrion.
She needs it to be Tyrion in her heart.
Yeah. So for her, I think that she feels 100% certain in her heart that it's him, and therefore doesn't need to consider anybody else.
Right.
Tywin, I would agree, even if he thinks that Tyrion might do it, or might be willing to do it, it does seem like he would be interested in being more sure.
Yeah.
Especially, but I don't know.
Yeah, I will be interested to see once we get, if things go as you would think, that there is a trial coming, and we do get to a point where, it might be at least things might come out at least where we would get to see, well, how is Tywin processing this information?
Well, and especially with Sansa disappearing, Tyrion does seem the most likely suspect. Or at least one remaining in the...
Right.
Poor little fucker.
Sheriff Bullock remarking that he was putting in Guild War names of places rather than King's Landing.
I assumed he was talking about the giant lion's head that the dwarfs came out of at the wedding.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Can we answer Sheriff Bullock's other question? Why do you all think Olenna picked that moment to poison Joffrey when she could have arranged his death any time before the wedding or after?
To secure Marjorie's position, because if Joffrey died before Marjorie had a chance to go through with the wedding, then there would be no pressing need to hook Marjorie up with Tommen.
Right.
Whereas she's already married Joffrey, and I think it goes further in the books about this, but there is precedent and there is custom that when one brother dies, the other one takes the place. Like, for instance, with Catelyn.
Right.
Now, granted, she never got to the point of marrying Brendan Stark, but they were betrothed. It was official. It was going to happen. Whereas this was a very, they had only been arranged to be married for a little while. It could easily be dissolved, and
Right.
Tommen wouldn't have to take that mantle. Plus the huge age difference, right? So this gives the securing of the arrangement between the Tyrells and the Lannisters, but it keeps Marjorie's maidenhood intact.
Right. There's
Or
no
at least in
question.
theory.
Well, there's no question. There was
In theory.
it was wedding and reception and then Purple Joffrey. So I mean,
Right. So there was never a chance
there
for
was
them
not
to
a betting.
Yeah, right.
So
So
she's still pure
Yeah,
enough to marry
he's
Tommen.
never, because she's never bedded before. Wink, wink.
Yes, it was. My mother told me all about this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I
Never
agree
fully.
100% with Nutty. Nutty's exactly right. That's why now, because it also has the benefit of just happening at the wedding. There's lots of people around, lots of chaos and confusion generally anyway,
Yeah.
and thus making it a little easier for any plot to get lost in the crowd.
Yeah.
You don't have someone having to sneak into his chamber and potentially gets caught because someone is off their route or something, but the primary reason, like Nutty said, is the perfect moment to keep it, like, you have some level of commitment after the wedding, but you don't risk something happening with Joffrey in the consumption, or not consumption, but
Consummation?
consummation.
Consummation.
Yeah. So you don't have to risk
Consumption is
that
the other part.
Joffrey is going to be cruel right away. But then also just this idea that if you are preserving at least the public appearance of Marjorie's maidenhood,
Yeah.
then you still have that card to play
Yep.
somewhere down the line, even if the current plan is to just go ahead and proceed with Tommen.
Yes. Yes, Doc Coleman asks, why not wait till the marriage is consummated before killing Joffrey? Sort of just the idea of being a virgin is a actual card that is played in Westeros as far as the whole moving on to Tommen. It's better that she hasn't consummated.
Right.
And
Well,
it's
and also just
Or
think
has
why
it.
they're
pregnant.
wanting to kill Joffrey in the first place is because he's a monster. Who knows what he would do
What he would do
that
to her.
night? I mean,
And I think Olenna recognizes the risk that would come into it if Marjorie had gotten pregnant by Joffrey and then he died. And then you know what I mean? I think this was the safest way for Marjorie to still kind of, for the Lannisters, it kind of locks the Tyrells into that financial kind of thing that's going on with them, financing like pretty much all the food for King's Landing, as we're told, and
Makes
so
it
much for the forces.
No. Makes it almost impossible to just completely call it off.
Yep.
But also, you didn't quite have to go all the way through with it.
Yeah.
And you've got all that public sympathy too.
Yeah.
We've got from Douglas a question of, she's not officially married if there's no wedding ceremony, right? Well, technically, consummation is the final stage of the wedding, but it's not like with Tyrion and Sansa, where they got married and then they just didn't consummate, where that could be overturned as if they were never married, because it was, they didn't do anything. Whereas in this case, they didn't get a chance to do anything, so it's not any fault of Marjorie's that they didn't consummate.
And that she was pregnant.
Exactly, and that she's not
Good
pregnant,
deal.
because if she were pregnant, then she'd just be in the same position that Cersei is, and you're just the mother of the king. You're not actually the queen. So this just is like the perfect timing. The public loves her. Everybody's sympathetic. You've got the president of the younger brother taking over, and so forth.
She's still publicly pure for,
Yes.
you know, and the way that they're doing the line of succession in the show is that it just reverts immediately to Tommen
Hmm.
rather than there being any real question with Marjorie. I mean, they didn't hold any small council meetings with Marjorie, clearly.
Or
And
or
remember,
Myrcella. There's even though Myrcella is older than Tommen, but
they
she's
don't
a
respect.
girl.
Yeah.
Be far away.
That whole Dorne thing and no
Yeah.
Skype.
The other thing is, she was inspected by a maester. Was that in the show as well?
I mean, they
No,
didn't do anything with that, but I mean, that's obviously something that was
Yeah.
more relevant in the book, is that
Yeah.
there was all this discussion of, well, she's supposed to be a virgin, right? So we have someone check and
sure.
say
And
she is, but who's
Maester
that?
equals
And
OBGYN.
yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that was
and
definitely in the
that
book
might
too.
be a
Uh-huh.
that might be a topic for future shows at some
Yeah.
point when things
uh,
get worse for
mhm.
Yeah.
certain things.
So,
Mike McCauley asks, how old
yeah.
is Tommen supposed to be at this part of the story? Looks like he's 14 to 16 on the show.
Mhm.
What was how
Like
old?
8 to 10,
It's
I
like
think.
12.
Yeah,
10.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, it's
yeah,
8 to
they've
10, and
aged
then you
him
do
up a little bit, like
The
all the
Westerosi
kids.
math. Right, Christiana. I
Yeah.
agree. They aged him up like they did the others.
Well, and thank God they
Well,
did, given the scene with Marjorie later. I mean,
Yeah, Chooch actually had a comment about that. He says Marjorie visits Tommen in bed. Thankfully, they don't add pedophilia to the mix, though I don't think that will last long.
well, it still
um,
is a little,
Oh.
but it's better than it would have been.
It was creepy, but it wasn't like call an adult creepy. You know what I mean? It was like it
Yeah.
was a neat way of showing how she reached out to Joffrey and how it failed, and how she reaches out to Tommen non-sexually, I think. And
mm,
you see, you know, that thing that we've seen in Tommen and the little bits that we've seen him in the show, which is that, you know, he laughed when the dwarf Battle of Five Kings was going on during the
Mhm.
wedding, but then it was like he pulled himself up short, like, oh, that's my uncle. I shouldn't let, you know. It's like it wasn't just that he was sitting next to his uncle. You could see that, like, oh, I feel like an ass. You know what I mean? It's like he seems like he's a good guy, where Joffrey was just such a shithead.
Yeah, I
Um,
think it plays much better on the show that he's that age because you can tell he's old enough to at least have somewhat budding desires for at least, ooh, I'd like to kiss this girl, whereas
yeah.
when you get the 8 to 10 year old, it's more about the cats, and I'm a
mhm.
child and you're
Yeah,
talking to me and you're being my friend.
yeah,
So I
and
do like
she's
the fact that it sort of plays into his puberty or what have you,
right.
but she's still not being too creepy. So
Yeah,
that was thankful.
yeah.
She's
And
just on the line though.
the other thing I think about, and I'm going to go back a little bit to like the timing of when Olenna did it, which was to kind of secure the alliance as much as could be done with a dead Joffrey, but also that if like one of the stigmas for women to get married was were they a virgin or not. And you know, Nutty talked about that. Another one is whether or not she can bear sons, children, primarily sons. And so if she had been had her marriage to Renly consummated and not produced heirs, if she had slept with Joffrey and not produced any kind of a pregnancy, then she would lose value as a prize, because she's thought of as, I mean, in the books you see that she's revered as like, if not the most beautiful woman in Westeros, one of the most, Marjorie is.
Yeah.
She is like the golden rose of Westeros. You know, she is just widely thought to be beautiful. And so, of course, this little boy gets a little turned on and stuff like that. And maybe not turned on, but you know, he's interested because she's so beautiful and she's so kind and she's so sweet and she says these things about Joffrey that he agrees with, and he's not really been able to say that stuff before. So
Mhm.
I think it's
And
really
and
genuine.
he likes the whole idea of keeping secrets from Mama.
Oh, please. You know he has seen Big
Somebody
Brother
to
and Mama's
conspire
whispering
with.
together.
Oh
Yeah,
well,
yeah.
and just the way she says it is kind of like, well, we're to be man and wife, we'll have a few secrets from her, I hope. And
Yeah.
just the way she says that, I mean, it's kind of like, there's a moment there where it's like I wanted to have some secrets from her.
I know, right? I think he just achieved puberty in that scene.
I
Sheriff
want to
Bullock.
say I want to say something about the age just really quickly.
Oh, yes.
So in the books, he's really young, like
Yeah.
6.
We-
He's around Rickon's age, which is the whole thing. I think he's a year older than Rickon. And in the first season, when we see him, he's little. He
He's
sits on
teeny.
Tyrion's lap, and they definitely aged him up because they decided to go a different way. Plus, it means that they have a better actor instead of dealing with a kid that is, 5 and might turn into not a good actor or might have whatever other problems. The younger the actor, the more problems you're going to have. So he looks like just a few years younger than Joffrey, but I think he's supposed to be, just on the edge of puberty here. And then you've got all that secret stuff with Marjorie, which, even though she's very convincing, that's the part where I'm like, ew, getting really creepy here.
Yeah.
All that stuff. I'm like, but then we're saved by Sir Pounce. I was so happy.
But I love the idea that Joffrey said he was going to cut up Sir Pounce into little pieces and feed it to him in his
And he
food.
said
And he
that
wouldn't
in
even
the
know it.
show,
Yep.
season 1.
What? I'm sorry, Nutty?
He says it in the show in season 1.
Yeah.
Did he? I didn't.
So,
I just
or
think
maybe I'm just misremembering because the books are very vivid.
I'm not saying I don't believe you. I certainly don't remember that.
It was
and the other thing to
a
think
special
about-
scene only on the Blu-rays.
available in Canada.
One other thing to think about is, like I said, it could be, my problem is the books are very vivid, so sometimes I might
Honey,
remember things that aren't in the
sure
show.
enough.
But let's not forget Tommen sitting on Cersei's lap about to be killed
Oh,
at
yeah.
Siege. So again, that's another whole disconnect. It went from sitting on her
yeah.
lap to Marjorie.
Well, the show like this, you have to make those sorts of pragmatic choices sometimes, and just the benefit you reap from making those changes outweighs the discontinuity.
Yes.
Yeah. Sheriff Bullock says it was creepy, but not Littlefinger creepy. I actually didn't think it was too creepy at all. I thought it was well done.
You don't have sons, sir.
Yeah,
It
well,
was creepy to me.
yeah, maybe because if I had been his age, I would have loved to have Marjorie sitting beside me.
Exactly.
But
Different
the
POV.
end there, when she kisses his forehead, leans in, it looks like she's gonna kiss him, and then she kisses his forehead. I just that was perfect.
Thank God for that moment.
I think she didn't even know how far to toe that line, she's making it up as she goes along, and she's like,
yeah.
She's an improviser. That's why.
Yeah.
That's why. Olenna says I was very good, but you're better. That whole. Better is all. Of course. It's you can't really.
And possibly the greatest, the greatest throwaway line of I don't want to even explain the plot device here of how did I get past the Kingsguard to get into the room. He's like, how did you get past the Kingsguard? And she just said, Kingsguard, and just keeps walking and completely changes the conversation. While I'm sitting there going, okay, we just had a scene where Cersei orders him to put 4 guards on the door, and maybe that hadn't happened yet, but the idea that they don't even explain how, obviously,
well, Jamie's
she used her wiles. Yes, she used her wiles to get by, but
I was going to say.
if I'm Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, if I was him, I would at least, the next conversation I would have would be with Sir Boros on the other side of the door to say, you just let her in? I mean, you can do it again, thank you, but at least talk to him like, don't let people in, unless it's her.
Going by your comments so far, I would say that if you were the guard working the door, you would have let her in without hesitating. And I'm saying that maybe the other guards did the same thing.
Oh no. I would at least go talk to him.
They've got Dany walking around tens of thousands of newly freed slaves without a guard. Why can't Tommen sleep in bed without a guard?
Yeah, well, they didn't just have an assassination in Danny's location, and she's
That's
done that the whole
that's
time as
true.
far as
They
having no
did
protection.
just take over a
But
city, but you
yeah,
never
so
know.
Sheriff
Slaves
Bullock,
dressed as masters. Masters dressed as
yeah,
slaves.
Sheriff Bullock does bring up a question here about the bedding ceremonies. Do they have bedding ceremonies in the Capitol? I get the impression that is a northern custom. The actual ceremony, making a big deal about it and carrying people into bedrooms, that I think that's more of a northern thing. As you get more more wild and
Well,
older
remember,
customs,
No,
it's
no.
still
Joffrey wanted Tyrion and Sansa
Yeah.
to do it at their wedding, and
Through the
true.
consummation.
Tyrion
I was
had to
saying that
threaten
that's.
to cut off Joffrey's cock.
And
Yeah.
we've got
I mean, I
Catelyn
guess.
talking about her bedding ceremony
Yeah.
when she married Ned, and she was married in
Yeah,
you
but that was in the north. I was
know.
thinking that the further north you get, the more of an event as far as the raucous nature of it, where it's still important for any wedding, even in the capital, that it may not be as
The show doesn't go
raucous,
too
but
much about it. There's only a couple of mentions of it on the show, but in the books they talk about it quite heavily. And the fact that Tyrion said no was a huge deal. Like it was unheard of to
Even
not have
beyond the
it.
wooden cock thing.
Yeah, it's done all over. I
okay.
believe they may not do it in Dorne though. I can't remember, but I feel like there was something Oberyn might have said. I don't remember, but I, c- I can't.
Well, but we also do know that it's not entirely without precedent because, of course, what Catelyn says about, Ned. But of course, their wedding was also kind of a special circumstance because they weren't originally supposed to be the ones getting married, but then Ned's brother was killed, so
Well,
that
and
was all kind of
they
messy.
they did that at one, didn't they? I don't remember if they did the wedding at River Run or Winterfell, but I mean, he would have been the Lord of the Holdfast, so it would have been easy to say, "Fuck you, leave my wife alone."
Well,
Hmm.
in the show, he did say no,
Right.
but
Mm-hmm.
in the books, he didn't. In
Okay.
the show, she says Ned wouldn't stand for it. She was totally expecting it, and then of course they did it with the red wedding. But in the books, you've got her internal monologue and how embarrassed she was that these men, these bannermen for her father, were grabbing at her, and I'm not going to get descriptive because she gets quite descriptive of what they do to her
Mm.
as they're going through the bedding ceremony. So it's I'm pretty sure she got married at River Run. Either that or the Southern men went to Winterfell.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, you might be right.
We've
I didn't
spent
remember it that way, but I think you're right now that I think about it.
Yeah, we spent a long time talking about the plot and the scene here. I did want to go back just for a second and see if anybody had anything that they did want to talk about Jamie and Cersei's scene together. The aftermath of what happened last
Hmm.
episode. Got the chilly reception from Cersei. They have a conversation. Whether it's tied to, probably in my eyes, the what happened in the Sept, and
Hmm.
then also the fact that he did go visit Tyrion, and the fact that he was, it's all tied together as far as her anger towards him, because she talks about him. You always pitied Tyrion, and going through that, but then also talking about, why did Catelyn Stark set you free, and questioning him about that, and you if I sent you out from the capital right now, would you bring me her head? And he doesn't really answer that as well. So he's not just looking good in his sister's eyes at this point
Yeah.
in any
Um.
regard. So
She's having more trouble manipulating him than she's ever had, I think.
Right. Well, I think also, just in terms of fallout from last week, I think what seems clear to me is that it sounds like they weren't really intending the scene to be as full on rape as it was depicted. I mean, obviously, we're all agreed that the way it ended up on the screen very much is, but that it sounds like that wasn't actually what they had in mind, and therefore the rest of the season is not going to act as though that's how it went down, because that's not how it was written. So I think it seems to me like the intent of the show was to say that it was edgy and aggressive, but more ambiguous, and that's how Jaime and Cersei are playing that it went down. And so I think probably the best way to deal with the fallout from that is to just say it was not effective at showing the complexity that they wanted it to show. And that's unfortunate, but we should move forward is my personal feeling on it. So although clearly there's no question that even if it was more ambiguous, the two are not very close at the moment, and they're just a hair's breadth from almost completely severing their relationship entirely. And I don't even just mean their incestuous relationship, but just like their familial relationship and dealing with each other like as brother and sister at all.
Right. One question while we're talking about King's Landing still. Douglas Lawson asks, so then who is in charge? Marjorie, Tommen, Cersei, Tywin? I guess Joffrey's dead. Tommen has not been coronated, so would it be Hand of the King that's actually in charge at the moment until there's a coronation? Or is it by proxy, or is it Queen Regent is, So what do you think? What would be the point of order, do you think, Nutty?
It's essentially between the Queen Regent, because the Queen Regent is the caretaker and guardian of the king, and the Hand of the King. The Hand is the one with the real power, as they always say. The line is, what is it that Robert said? The king eats and the hand takes crap.
The shit.
Yeah. But
the king shits and the hand wipes. Is the
something
Well, it's
like
the
that,
book
yeah.
version versus the TV show version.
Yeah.
So you've got all of that, and it's basically when we started out, Cersei was in a nice position of power because Joffrey was just a little kid, in a sense, and then the more he took control, the more she got squeezed out. Sure. The more she got squeezed out of her position of power, and she was no longer on council meetings, and she was no longer important. But now that Tywin is there as the Hand, it's going to be between the Queen Regent and the Hand, but really it's what the Hand says, because the Hand has got the rest of the council on his side. If she had the council on her side and it was Tyrion, she might have a better chance, much like she did when Joffrey wasn't very involved. But considering that Tommen, and again, it's hard to tell with the book and the show, because in the show they've really aged him up. In the book, he's so young that he's not involved at all. The way that it looks like it's going to go is it looks like Tywin is definitely grooming him, trying to mentor him, and it will definitely be the Hand that has the power, and he is going to groom Tommen properly. So Cersei's not going to be given that position of power as Queen Regent as she was, but she is still that position, as Oberon definitely pointed out at the wedding that she liked so much. She was going to no longer be Queen Regent. Well, she's back to being Queen Regent, so she does have some good power.
But I think the way we think about it in terms of who's really in charge is like, well, who's been in charge?
Yeah.
Before the wedding, like
since he arrived,
Cersei was Queen Regent then, unambiguously, but it was still really Tywin calling the shots.
And the other thing to think about, by the way, if she is Queen Regent, she cannot be forced to marry, because she has to be there for her son. They can't make her marry Loras if she's Queen Regent.
Well, we're gonna have to have a wedding real fast. A wedding real fast. So
hurry before someone else dies.
Yeah. Let's finish up King's Landing. So we have a couple more scenes with Jaime. We have Jaime and Brienne in the whatever that room is with the book. So she reads the same page from the book we sort of saw over the shoulder in an earlier episode, reading about Jaime being, named the Kingslayer and being pardoned by Robert and so on. Again, bringing up the point that that his page is not have a lot of good stuff, and but there's still time to get things written, and he's I guess leader of the Kingsguard, so he's responsible for writing. So does that mean he gets to write his own page there? Is that
Well,
so.
I think that's the implication.
analogy? Yeah.
I
So
know
he can
Barrick's
write
just
something good.
lined himself out in the book.
Yeah. So we have some gifts given to Brienne. Again, a great
Oh my God.
two-person
I
scene
was gonna
there
cry.
with giving her the sword, and I loved how he had it draped across his arm and across his gold hand. And
It was so good.
It was beautiful. That was amazing.
The thing is like I was expecting the sword, so like as soon as they were in there, I was thinking, okay, well this is going to be that. But then when he uncovered the armor, that was when I started getting a little misty-eyed. It's like, oh.
But wait, I have another gift for you.
Wait,
And
then you
another
covered
one.
Podrick.
Another one.
Yeah.
Thank God. What would we do without Podrick at this point?
It's interesting, just because we talk about the differences that in the books, Pod was not like assigned to her this way. He actually just follows her in secret at first, and she has to she catches him following her and basically says, "Dude, what are you doing? What are you following me for?" And because she at first thought that it was like a spy out to really, to undermine her mission, right? But then he had to explain. But I feel like this actually it's simpler.
I like it. I thought it was
played well.
Yeah. And Bronn was so gentle when he
Yep.
was like, "Go ahead, go get her horse, you dumbass." It was so cute. It was the
I
most
don't
tender
need
you
a
hear him
squire.
talking.
Well,
I don't need
just
a squire.
from a practical standpoint too, as capable as Brienne is,
Yep.
if you're going to wear a suit of armor like that around, you need a squire. You need
need a
someone to just
squire.
to help you get it on and off. It's not meant to be done one person.
So
Road-
did she
yeah.
accept the leg up into the horse?
I don't
Because he
remember.
goes, he gets on his
they did
knees,
not
ready to give
show.
her a
They
leg up,
sort of
and they
skipped.
go off.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wait a second, what happened there?
I don't know.
See, this is where the fan fiction gets written. It's when they cut away to
Well,
other
Podrick
scenes.
does have those skills.
So
There's lots of
Tumblr.
fan fiction to happen.
Tumblr is going crazy about two
juice.
things.
Oh, jeez.
Both just everybody loving Jamie, sorry, not Jamie, Brienne and Pod going off together. It's a huge sticking point for fans of the books that we all just love it. All of the fan art that's been made over the last couple of years is just all coming out on Tumblr again. All of these great renditions of Pod and Jamie, and like some of them they're so bizarre because she's so huge and he's so small.
Yeah.
And so those are great and everybody's loving that. And then there's the whole looks between Brienne and Jamie, and Tumblr's like, just kiss already. And like, as much as I went into my rant last week, or my spiel last week, about how yes, they definitely love each other, but is it about a physical relationship? Nah, I don't really think so. But it's kind of neat to see that. I enjoy watching the shipping on Tumblr. So there's that.
Yeah, I tend to agree that even if there's some hypothetical aspect of a more traditional romantic relationship, that is buried in so many layers of complexity that they would really need to spend a lot more time with each other than they have for that to actually get teased out. It's not ruling out that it's somewhere in the mix, but I think that their dynamic is way more complex than simple romantic attraction.
Agreed.
Yep.
So, let's see. Did we have anything else there?
Oh, one last thing.
Did Chooch have any other notes about King's Landing, Viv?
Nope.
There,
But I'm hoping that next week we'll get some
Okay.
juicy tidbits from him.
There have been quite a few articles coming out saying that
Ready?
that is the last time we will see Sir Pounce, which I don't understand because none of these articles have an actual source. And there's a Sir Pounce Tumblr, not Tumblr, sorry, Twitter account that seems to be arguing with everybody that says he's not coming back because he says he has an army.
Okay.
Well, I would
Yes,
also
sure,
just
look
like
in the
I
chat.
don't see how
It's
anyone.
a link to an MTV.
Oh yeah,
I
one
was
of
just
those is
saying
going in the
that
meme
Sarah
roundup.
Bullock had a thing in the chat. The MTV, yes, we will put it in the meme roundup. The MTV Sir Pounce fans will love
Animated
the
gifs
MTV
of cats.
link. Yes.
I think it's
Go
silly
ahead.
for anyone to make an assertion that we'll never see Sir Pounce again. Never is a long time. You never know.
Well, no
Maybe
offense,
not.
but
Maybe they don't currently have any more scenes with him in this season, but they haven't filmed next season yet. Besides, how hard
Exactly.
is it to have Sir Pounce show up again? You have a cat in the scene. That's all you
I
need to do.
know. That's what everybody's
Exactly.
saying.
there's so much
And I'm sorry,
going on
but
in the books.
IMDb has Sir Pounce listed in 3 other episodes, so come on.
IMDb also
Thank you.
has.
I told you there was no source, and it's not a fact. This is bad reporting. It is not a fact, as I tell my students, unless you have a credible source. And
Okay, so
IMDb
PG
seems
says
to be
yes,
trumping.
Nutty says no, so we'll find out
No,
who's.
I didn't say
we'll know
no.
next week,
But I
right?
brought
Well,
it
I
up
didn't say no.
because I said I didn't think Sir Pounce was coming into the series since they
Neither
aged him
one of
up.
you want
Well, if
accountability.
I say he's not coming back, that means he'll come back again.
That's
Okay.
because of I don't care about Sir
Yeah.
Pounce.
Yeah, I'm
Everyone
less
cares
concerned
about
about.
Sir Pounce.
Well, no, Sir Pounce is awesome. He rocks, best kitty ever. But there's Arya, there's Gendry, there's lots of cool shit to come that doesn't necessarily involve animals.
Mm-hmm.
There are animals, dragons, direwolves, bears, oh my, but
Oh
I
my.
don't know about bears. Bears?
We had bears.
But I do like that we have a quest. We have a quest.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we have Brienne on a quest to find Sansa
Yeah.
and
Although-
Arya. She's still alive, but you know, quests. I like quests.
Although I felt exactly this same way at this point in the books, so this is still only based on what we know right now at this point, which is that Sansa has gotten on a boat with Littlefinger to sail off to the Eyrie, and Brienne is setting off on horses out of King's Landing. They're not paths that are likely to cross anytime soon, and it's just one of those things where you can't. I couldn't help but feel like, even though it's great for Brienne to have a quest, you just sort of feel like, boy, you're not getting off to a good start, and you have no way of knowing how far off you
Well,
are.
Maybe she's like it's like her first time in the zone, so she has to go kill 10 boars or whatever
yeah,
and
there you
turn in
go.
the quest and get the next level up quest.
Yeah.
See, all I'm
So-
thinking for some reason in my head, I don't know why, but suddenly I'm thinking of Nina Kimberly, and it's like, I'm going on a quest for what? I don't know.
Yep. That would be Nina Kimberly the Merciless, which was written by our own Christiana Ellis.
Which you can get in print still, right?
Hmm?
Can
What?
people still get that in print?
Yep.
Awesome.
Of course.
I've got 2 copies. Actually, no, I have one and Rory has one.
So, are we ready to go to Castle Black? Is there anything else anybody
Okay.
want?
Yeah, let's
I
go.
think we got it all.
Awesome. So earlier in the episode, before some of these King's Landing scenes, we had one visit to Castle Black. We had the training montage with John and Bren and Locke.
Sorry.
We have some of mirroring dialogue from season 2, I guess, where Alistair is baiting John, and Emo John could not hold back and would attack Alistair, but in
After
this
flicking
case
his
he
pearls
is
around.
yes, but here he is not Emo John any longer, and he controls his emotions and does walks away. Although there's a pretty good question there. Well, you're not training them, so shouldn't I be training them?
Yeah.
But yeah, so
Well, I think Thorne's implication was that it was Gren that was supposed to be training them, and John was not supposed to be helping. He was supposed to be emptying a chamber pot somewhere.
yeah.
Because he's
But yeah, so it wasn't that it was Thorne's job. It was that it was Gren's job, and John wasn't supposed to be helping. Was technically what he said. But otherwise, I agree with your point completely that Thorne's basically just a douche who's making trouble for no apparent reason.
Yes. But then after that scene we have Janice Slint making the comment of, John's popular, you better watch it. There's going to be a choosing at some point. Which, did that line bother anybody besides me?
It was it bugged me that it took this long to have any kind of conversation about who's going to take over the command officially, rather than just seeing a bunch of old dudes behind the table.
I liked it. I thought it made motives quite clear.
What did you dislike about it,
What?
PG?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna.
My thoughts, and I may have mentioned this last week. The whole setup of the season, I thought part of it was, okay, John is going to have to deal with the fact that everybody hates him, or that distrusts him, not hates him. And the idea that, a couple episodes after, sort of establishing this, that you're back, you were with the wildlings, and no one trusts what you're saying besides his closest friends, that all of a sudden he's popular and, we better get him out of here because there's going to be a choosing. I think
you're kind of inventing some of that, though, because the only people who ever actually said that they didn't trust him were Thorne and Slint. Nobody else even ever said anything. Unfortunately, they're in charge, so their opinion carries weight. But nobody else ever actually gave him a hard time about it. So, without wanting to blame you for it, because I'm not. I think you kind of invented that in your head, so it's not really fair to hold the show accountable to it. Now, you could say that you wish that had been the direction the show took, but I don't think the show led you on.
The thing is, while Thorne didn't trust him and other people gave John a hard time, nobody really likes Thorne anyway.
Yeah.
Because Thorne is the drill sergeant. Thorne is the one that puts all of the men of the Night's Watch through their basic training. And what does he do? He tears them down so he can build them back up and turn them into brothers of the Night's Watch. Nobody's gonna like you after you do that. And everyone has experienced that already.
Mm-hmm.
So that's always, while people didn't like John because he grew up in Winterfell and they were a bit spiteful about that, nobody really likes Thorne either. So it's not like they were really comparing somebody loved against somebody who broke their vows. It was, we got this jerk that we all hate, and then this guy broke his vow because he slept with a woman, but he also brought us this information, and we've got to focus.
And he's not raping a house full of women and young girls out in Craster's Keep either, so he gets points for that one.
And that's the other thing. We've got everybody that came from Craster's, and it went from you disobeyed your vows. This is really serious, and then we get the guys from Craster's, and it's like, holy crap, we've got a serious problem out there. We've lost half our men. And they're all worse than wildlings right now.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So it's very complex.
Yeah.
See, I feel like the run-of-the-mill guys there. See, I mean, just think about what you have said yourself, PG, about John this season, which is that he has matured substantially based on his experiences beyond the wall. And I think everyone else is seeing that too. Plus, he knows what's going on out there. Until, we only have a small handful of people that actually were out there, had any experience with what was going on. The Rangers, like most of the Rangers, died because they went with Mormont. So there's not that many left. And so he comes back. He's considerably matured. People are seeing that. He's got kind of this natural... he grew up with Ned Stark, so he kind of knows how to act, right? And he's doing better with that. He's kind of, it's coming naturally to him, and so I think people are responding to that. And so even if there might have been some initial distrust, there's also the fact that he is back there with them now, helping them train. You know?
No, and I think it's more of a, and my perception of what I guess I wanted based on what was in the books, and not to say that the books were different, it's just my memory of things, that it was more certain things that he did later on was his coming out, rather than, the idea that the way it's coming across with things there. So, but yes, you are right. Is my perception rather than what the show is putting across. But
well, and that's fair. I don't want to be telling you that you're wrong to feel the way you did.
No. That is not how it came across. So don't worry about that.
Well, okay.
But
Still
we do
friends.
have
Now I would have.
always the other thing about there is that we have Locke.
Oh man. I
Love
love how
his
they're
appearance.
I love how they're soft selling that whole plot line.
That's great. It's like, wait a minute, isn't that is?
And then we have the fast travel hub, and we get there. He's been there and gotten himself inside, and a lot faster than the wildlings could find Castle Black and do anything. He just gets there from the Dreadfort and gets on the inside, and
well, presumably he rode a horse, right? And he went straight there via the roads.
True. But
and then we've got that whole disjointed timeline thing.
Yeah, well, I agree. It's a little wobbly. That's certainly true.
I mean, it's not something I'm complaining about. Just sort of laughing about that. Last episode, he's. I think you need to go here, and then the next he's there and already ingrained and getting in the inside and what have you, and who knows what Ramsay is actually doing now.
Hey, I was the one that was complaining about how much bigger the dragons got in a couple of weeks. So I am on board with the idea of poking gentle fun at disjointed timelines.
Yes. But let's see. So he, I did like the offer of a handshake with Locke, and I'm just like, John, don't touch his hand. He might grab it and cut yours off. Don't shake his hand. But yeah, so they're making friends. So
and the whole subtle awful thing. Well, okay. We'll have to circle around back to the fact that apparently John did tell, or Sam did tell John about Bran, which
that was surprising.
Yeah,
but also just the fact that look who just happens to be standing out in the hallway as they discuss that, and it's like, I just love how I mean, it's not like it's subtle like you could miss it, but I love that they're not really being too heavy-handed with the whole thing that Locke is doing here. I think, as filler material goes, this is some good stuff.
Yep.
Yeah, I did have, like you were saying, the next scene is John and Sam talking about Gilly. So the immediate, I did a wrong thing by taking her to Moletown, which comes across as not disingenuous, but just oh God, here he is. He's being more emo than John ever was. And then they start talking, and then you hear just off the cuff, when you told me about Bran going north of the wall, it's like, okay, that's one of the scenes you would be looking forward to see, is him telling John this and his reaction to that. And now it's just, oh yeah, a few weeks ago you told me about that, and
well, maybe they filmed it and Kit Harington just did a really bad job at acting.
Or maybe they just felt like they wanted the screen time for something else.
Oh no, I'm joking.
Well, but I agree though. I feel like that's a notable enough thing. But then again, what occurs to me now that I think about it is, how does that scene go? Hey John, I happened to run into your brother, but I let him go beyond the wall. What? How could you do that? well, I tried to talk him into staying, and then he wouldn't, and then where do you go from there? Like, it's a scene that would be hard to actually write, I think.
Mm-hmm. No, I get what you're saying.
Especially
Yeah.
since you don't have the book to go by. That said, I will also say this is like the butterfly effect thing of, the scene last week with Jaime and Cersei was different because the timeline was different for them. Well, in this case, it's different because there is a character from the books that played into that whole Bran and Sam thing that isn't in the show. And that substantially changes how Sam would feel about the whole thing. And I believe that, given how it played out in the show, Sam absolutely would tell Jon and should. Because even though he was not able to persuade Bran and wasn't in a position to say, no, I'm going to force you to come with us, I mean, like, there was nothing he could do if Bran was just going to refuse and then Jojen and Mira and Hodor were going to help him. Like, what could Sam do at that point, right? He really didn't have any way to force him to come with them.
Right. And Sam in the book, didn't he give them his oath that he would not tell?
Well, yeah, but there was other elements to how it played out in the book that, again, I won't say because never know when they might bring some of that back into the show. But but there were other elements that were big factors in why he decided that he wouldn't tell in the books.
Right.
I agree 100%. Without that element, it really does change everything because now it's just there's a bunch of kids and a large guy who can only say one word going north of the wall. I've read a lot of books. This kind of story does not work out well. Whereas with that other element, it's kind of sacred duty kind of a situation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Did anybody get and maybe this is another one of those just me things, that scene though is partially just plot device to make an excuse why Bran and them would be close to Craster's Keep.
Yes, it absolutely was that. 100%.
It just bothered me. I mean, it gave me chills that it's like lazy writing. Because obviously from everything else that we've seen, Bran would never and Jojen and Mira, they want to stay away from any sort of people other than if there's if they had established that they had no food and they were at the last legs, and they sort of did say that they're low on food earlier, but the idea that they would even come close to this place that isn't.
Well, the thing is like I think it is lazy writing. I wasn't too bothered by it, but especially given that they were trying to stay away from people and were just coincidentally near Craster's, and yet John's whole theory for why they might be at Craster's was that they would be seeking out some place to shelter.
That's exactly right.
And so that doesn't align, and so it really is just coincidence. It's a coincidence that I'm willing to accept, but I agree that it's basically they're just trying to force, well, how can we have those two paths intersect? But I think...
And then the other piece being... I was just going to say, but tied into that is the idea that, okay, let's have the baby crying be another impetus for him. Okay, let me warg, and then I'll go up there and see. It was sort of like, one thing after another is sort of getting him to this place to be captured or whatever.
I didn't have any problem with any of that, although I acknowledge that it's a little bit contrived. The one thing that I really was annoyed by is, sure, okay, they've decided to keep Ghost alive. I'm so happy that Ghost is around, we know where he is, and that he's doing okay if imprisoned, that I don't mind this per se. But why on earth would these mutineers form this cage to keep Ghost out and then make a trap big enough to catch another direwolf right outside that cage? Like, what sense does that make? Why would they do that?
Unless they were trying to use it to catch anything that would go after Ghost as a way of trapping
what
food.
in the forest
Why
is
would
going
you
to go
after
after Ghost?
a direwolf? Yeah.
Wildlings, White Walkers.
So that was her
Turkey
one that,
horses.
Towards a direwolf, because a direwolf can actually tear apart a White Walker.
yeah, that was the piece that made me roll my eyes. But
Evil.
again, it's like I wasn't too bothered. But it's like what I was saying at the beginning, is that there's some stuff in here that's very clearly filler, and because I know that there's some filler that's needed at this point, I'm willing to be more forgiving of it. But that said, I think we can all acknowledge that's what it is.
I don't know. That didn't bother me that much. What bothered me was the two fucking direwolves being basically 2 feet apart and not smelling each other at any point or raising alert to each other. There's no howling. There's no nothing. It's just suddenly Summer's next to Ghost and, oh, a trap. But why did they not know? You know what I mean? It's not like they were close enough that I think that that Summer and Ghost should have known that they were there.
Yeah.
Well, remember that
No,
Summer wasn't.
That's my final
Summer
statement.
was,
That's it.
Summer was. Yeah, well, Summer was Bran.
Right.
So it wasn't Summer saying.
No, she means
the fact that they
Bran
didn't
worked.
smell each other.
Well, yeah, but before the warg thing, if they could hear the baby cry, why would we think that the direwolves couldn't smell each other? I mean, we know that animals have such a heightened sense of smell, especially wolves.
I see what you're saying.
Well, Bran
don't
in
have-
Summer, though, might not know what he was smelling.
Probably not the way we see it in the show so far, but in the book.
I think we're already having to lean pretty far over
Yeah,
just to try to make it work.
Yeah,
so I don't know that it's worth spending that much time on it.
I don't mind.
Trail plot.
I don't mind I don't mind the fact that there is a trap around Craster's Keep that could be large enough to catch. The fact that Ghost is still alive is what is like. Why would you do that? It's not like this is a creature you could ever control in any way whatsoever. Why would you have this here and feed it and keep it alive?
Well, I bought it just on the basis that Carl is an insane bastard.
There we go. So let's talk about the insane bastard. So
I kept calling him Owen, by the way, in my notes.
Yeah. Yeah,
that's who he plays on Torchwood.
I talked to my friend Kevin today, and he has never seen Torchwood, and I was like, well, he was a guy in Torchwood, and he was like, no, I don't remember. So he was the crazy scientist in Pacific Rim. He's like, oh, okay, I remember that guy. And I was like, yeah. I said this is another one of those examples where they, introduce this character 5 seconds before he kills, Lord Mormont, and then you don't see him for a whole season, and now he's back, and people are expected to remember this is the guy that started the mutiny. It wasn't Rast or whatever. So after 30 seconds of screen time, so for those of us who recognize him from other shows or things, then that makes him much more memorable. But one of those problems just with this size of cast, being able to give people enough screen time to recognize them later on and what their importance might be is just a hard thing to do. So anyway,
I thought the performance sold what could have been some really awkward writing, like him narrating to himself that he's drinking wine out of Jeor Mormont's skull, the way nobody would actually talk to themselves, and having to go on and on about like this, like you know how much they used to pay me to kill people back in King's Landing, and the thing is, like,
7 pieces of silver.
Now the thing is, the performance sold it for me.
Yeah.
But if I was just looking at it on the page, I would say, it reminds me of that episode of Futurama where Fry does the musical with the devil's robot hands, and there's the whole thing. But at one point, the robot devil storms onto the stage and says, "Your lyrics lack subtlety. You can't just have your characters announce how they're feeling. That makes me feel angry."
Exactly. I knew exactly where you were going with that.
That makes me feel angry.
Oh.
Yes. The scene itself, and we talk about the rape of, or was it rape of last week, and then you have the entire scene in there, which whether you want to call it the show being gratuitous in certain ways when they don't have to be quite so much, or what have you. It didn't bother me with the idea of this is what these people would be doing, because that's obviously what they would be doing, but. Whether it was too much or they showed more than they needed to, I don't know.
I think that was set up for Mira's reaction later, because bravo to that actress. She freaking sold it. I mean, you could read everything she was thinking on her face. She's like, we got to get out of here now. And they're like, oh, we can't. And she's like, fuck you guys, because that's not going to happen to you. That's going to happen to me. And I think, like, us seeing that is what they were setting up for it. And then internally, my meta head was going, yeah, they were really upset about Jamie raping not Brienne, jeez, what's wrong with me? Raping Cersei last week. Well, guess what? Here's some more rape. Oh, and there's some more rape, and here's some more rape. Yeah, this show's disturbing. Get used to it.
Yeah, I think that there's some room for criticism, just in the sense of saying that it's not that rape is completely out of place in the world of this show, or that it can't be something that would happen, and it's not like it's off limits. But at the same time, I think it has and can be something that it just becomes like their go-to to say, well, we want to show this guy's bad, so let's have him rape somebody. Yeah. And then it really just becomes a plot device as opposed to any kind of a meaningful, look at something real, and it just becomes shorthand for saying this is a bad guy.
I think that's certainly true, but I don't think that it's something that gets overplayed. I think as long as...
I don't have a big complaint about this show specifically in that sense, as much as I think it's just good to be aware that that's a possible thing, and to just to think about it, So when something like this happens in the show, it's worth talking about. It's like, well, did it have to be that way, or could they have done something differently? And certainly for people who are actually, trying to be creative and make their own things, keep that in mind. Is that, sometimes it can be lazy writing to just always say, well, how do you say someone's a bad guy and make them rape someone?
Yeah. I think other than child abuse, it's one of the most effective ways, because it still happens so much.
Well, yeah, I mean, clearly it works, but
I can't think of like another crime that could be committed against a woman in these ages, this kind of timeline that's being represented, even though it's a fantasy timeline. It's been pretty accurate, I think, on the violence towards women and the way they're treated during the bedding after they're married. As Nettie was saying, some of the things that happened to the new bride, on their way to their wedding bed. It's just violence, and women are property, and it just fucking sucks that that's the way it is, but it's that way everywhere. So I think that the books and the TV show a lot of rape, but I think that happens a lot in this kind of a situation.
But I like what Christiana says, though, where it's, especially to people who want to create their own properties, don't just throw rape in to make somebody bad. Have a reason for it. Like, for instance, in this scene, I really feel that it's there so that we know why Mira is going all bug-eyed and crazy about it later.
We've all felt that.
Yeah. No. And just like in the scene with Arya and the Hound, and that girl's being basically molested in front of them, I think that's for Arya to just see, like, okay, that could be me, but I'm here with the Hound, so I need to stay by his side.
Could be worse than being with the Hound.
So each time that we see it, so far, and I could have missed some, but so far they've tread the line well. But it is something to be aware of, because a lot of shows, not Game of Thrones so far yet, I'm not trying to make absolute statements, but a lot of shows will just throw this in there. It's like, oh, he's a bad guy. Have him rape her. Yeah. Well, there's something else you could have him do to show that he's a bad guy.
Well, because I think what happens is lots of times when a rape happens in a story, and again, I'm not criticizing any specific example, but it becomes not about an actual crime with a victim that is a human being. It becomes the victim is a piece of furniture, is a prop to be a shorthand for establishing a character trait instead of it being like an actual meaningful look at something with a human being involved. And again, it's like I'm not saying specific examples from the show do that as much as just that's the thing to think about and be aware of. And everybody's going to draw that line somewhere different. And so when people are complaining about the rape in this show, that's, I think, where they're coming from. Whether we agree exactly where the line goes or not, that's the argument, I think.
Yeah. One thing I actually did like was the fact that the violence that was occurring around Carl, but he wasn't actually, in the middle of raping someone. It just showed even more. I'm the most evil guy here, even with all this going on around me. And I didn't buy that Lord G.R. Mormont's skull would be that small. It should have been bigger. Just my thought. But so he is captured, or they are captured.
My thought there actually just briefly was that it demonstrates how a skull does not actually make a very good wine glass.
Yes.
The one thing I did, I thought was very much tied to, we wanted to do this little special effect, but it really didn't make a whole lot of sense, was, Ghost is surrounded by snow, so he has a water supply, and Rast pours out water onto the ground, the only purpose of which was so that it could freeze to show that the White Walker was coming up. So I really hated that little 10-second thing there. You hear you don't see, but the baby gets taken. Summer is captured, then they get captured, then you have the scene where Carl is tormenting them, and Jojen has his fit and falls down, and Bran admits or tells them who he is. So yeah, we'll see. We have the potential of a Stark meeting a Stark. Could it be?
Never
Will it happen?
No.
Lies.
I mean, I would actually like it if it did, but I feel like for a filler storyline, I don't feel like I am skeptical that they would allow it to diverge as far as to allow Bran and Jon to actually meet up. I think that something will happen so that Bran is gone before Jon gets there.
This is not really spoiler, but it is. I mean, just to the point where one of the big things that everybody is when reading these books is that you want Starks to meet Starks and get back together again so badly, and obviously we're saying that if it does happen here, it
could.
So.
I will be surprised if it does, but I'm certainly, that seems to be the trajectory they're both on at the moment.
I think it might happen. I think that so much of what's going on with Jon and Bran right now is such a departure from the books that anything is possible. As we said before, that element that was with Bran throughout this whole process wasn't there, and that element would have kept him away from Craster's, would have explained to him what this crying child was. Everything would have been completely different. But without that element, they fall into this. I right now, it could be very good if they handle this well. It could be very good. It's very exciting for us book readers to not know what's going to happen. And the thing I want to explain to people who haven't read the books is that so much of Bran's story goes on inside his head that you can't show that on TV and make it interesting. There's already a big contingent of fans that tell me that they skip the Bran chapters, which makes me go, what? How do you skip the Bran chapters? Because they find Bran boring. Now imagine if you're trying to show all of this internal stuff on TV, it's just not going to work. So I kind of like that they're changing all of this. But it could go very badly, so I'm reserving judgment, but I am hopeful.
Here's
Well,
what. Well, sorry.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead, because mine goes into a later scene. So go ahead.
So, even though my gut is telling me that I don't think that they'll ever actually get to meet, I almost feel like it's almost that aspect of this story where the instant you start to want something, the show will take it away from you. But anyway, I what I would think would be really cool, though, if they did meet, is that it would allow the connecting of a couple of dots in a way that doesn't really happen and I don't even just mean in characters getting to meet, but the more mystical aspect of this conflict that Bran is experiencing versus the more practical, visceral aspects that Jon is dealing with in terms of the Night's Watch that actually has to, like swing swords at whites and, frozen zombies and White Walkers and stuff like that, versus what Bran's going through, this more mystical aspect of it, and to have them both be able to just compare notes just a little bit, and each of them have a bigger sense of what's going on in a way that also lets the audience make those two things connect a bit better. I think that would be really great. And, plus just would be happy to see those two things, especially because you almost know for sure that it would have to end with Jon deciding to let Bran continue on his way, which, just imagining what they would have to do for that to make sense for the characters would be really exciting to see. My guess is that something else will separate them before that could happen, but it would be cool to see.
I'm hopeful for all that you said. That's one of the things that gives me hope, and that's how I think that they could do this very well. They could take care of certain elements that are missing in Bran's story, and they can take care of elements that are missing in Jon's story, and it could just be awesome. And you know what? The fan in me just wants to say, let Jon give him a hug before he has to let him go again, and then he lets him go again, and it's all painful again. So the balance is not ruined, but we've got that opportunity. The other thing I do want to bring up is poor fucking Hodor. That killed me. Am I the only one that was just like crying?
No, I think we all pretty much lost our shit. I don't think you're the only one.
Definitely.
That was built to break us. That was built to make us all screaming.
I'm waiting for Bran to warg into Hodor to break
test if you didn't
kill everyone. I'm waiting for Bran to warg into Owen or Carl or whatever his name is and kill everyone that way. I want a little bit of Arya inside of Bran. It's not happening. It was just really
phrasing.
Can I ask
Are we not doing phrasing now?
Last one, absolutely.
Not literally.
I have a question. Do we have an explanation other than the visions take their toll on why Jojen looks so fucked up? Because he is weak and he is sweaty and clammy, and they're carrying him around. And
they haven't really done
line that he's gone through, and it seems like the only excuse has been the visions.
Yeah, I think
unless it's a spoiler.
I mean, they've said in the past, remember when we saw Jojen have a seizure, I think that was back in season 3, when he had the vision and he had the seizure, and they were talking about how the visions actually take a lot out of him.
Right, that's what I was
and so they kind of set it up, but they haven't really reminded us that that's why he looks so pale and sick. Yeah. But my guess is that we'll hear more about that going on, because, I mean, if he's that... He looked pretty rough. You know what I mean? Like, if they're continuing to travel and he's that bad, they're going to have to address that.
And they did address it a little bit last season when he was having seizures, and Osha was saying, he's so weak, and you have to take care of him. And she's like, yeah, sometimes we have people take care of us. And she points out how Osha's doing the same thing with Bran and yada, yada, yada. So it's been addressed, but it's not really a main focus, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I do have one thing, though, and this is more of a joke than actually a complaint, is the idea that we talked about this element that we keep mentioning, which is basically a character that is in the book that, we won't describe too much, but it's sort of mystical, mythical, very, very magical, very, wildling, north of the wall type stuff. And we're like, well, it sort of makes sense that they didn't have that, include that, because that's, just a little step off the edge that maybe the show didn't want to do. But then they have this weird ass shit at the end of the episode where they go completely, crazy with White Walkers and kings and demons and crowns coming out of the skull and what have you. And
HBO bit the big one too. It was
it's
been stated that they've released spoilers for book readers.
Yes, but they've
of that.
Here, the thing is,
everything's a spoiler for me. I haven't read book 5 yet. Fuck it.
I also the thing is,
just tired.
My opinion is this is not a spoiler, and it's dumb to say that it is.
Yeah.
Now, it's interesting to talk about, but like a spoiler to me is like, oh, such and such a character dies, or hey, there's a big war and this side loses. A spoiler is not, oh, hey, there's this myth and it turns out parts of it might be true.
What I was referencing was a statement that HBO actually put out and then rescinded.
Well, okay, are you talking about the Night King thing?
Yeah.
Well, but that's like still.
And I don't even mind talking about it.
I'm just bringing up the kerfuffle. I'm just bringing up the subject.
I know. Well, and my opinion is that the people who are making it a kerfuffle are wrong to do so, and it's silly. That's my opinion.
Okay.
It's interesting to talk about.
Yeah, and I agree, and I don't think I think we can talk about it in the context of what this is. So people are like, what are they talking about for the last 5 minutes? So HBO had an episode description or some text where they referenced, the character at the end with the little crown as what is it, Night King?
Yeah.
And there is a story that's sort of ancillary information that you can get through the books and things about the Night King. And so, the very deep down geeks that know this character name and what it represents, they're saying, oh, this is a character in the show, then you're tying this thing in to, oh my gosh, they're out ahead even where George R.R. Martin is in the book writing, and that isn't necessarily the case at all. He may, again, they've got outline of what Martin's doing, but there's nothing to say that Martin ever references more than just the mythology and the stories around this Night King. So
I prefer to think of him as like Ice King and have Finn and Jake and Marceline come in and fix it.
But there's little references like this, and I call them Easter eggs. Whenever they bring up like when Old Nan, because this is from an Old Nan story, right? That's why it's not a spoiler, because you hear Old Nan telling the story in like book 1 or something like that. And in this show, she says, "Oh, let me tell you about Sir Duncan the Tall," and everyone's all like, "Oh my God, that's the Hedge Knight," and we're all excited. And then we see Sir Duncan's page in the book with the Kingsguard, and these things to me are like Easter eggs, and they're little nods to the book readers, like, yeah, you remember that. You're a big old nerd. You've been reading these books for a long time, and we're going to give you a little payoff. And so I don't really think that it was a spoiler, but I think people turned it, like some people will say, if you tell me that you really liked it, that's a spoiler. And I'm like, that's not a spoiler. No. What did I spoil? I liked the Avengers. That didn't ruin the movie for you,
I'm really sick of the spoiler.
And the other thing is that some of the extras on one of the Blu-ray seasons, the Night King is mentioned, and they have a little snippet on it. So the idea that, okay, it's something that has already been established, at least on the DVDs of the HBO
Mhm.
show, the fact that they're bringing it up again, it's actually a connective thing that's actually pretty cool,
Well-
not that we're trying to ruin future books for people that haven't read books 6 and 7. That's ridiculous.
I just stopped reading the article so I wouldn't get spoiled on anything that wasn't a headline. But that's
Well,
just
I
me.
just
It's crazy.
I just
know.
spoiled it for you.
It's no, because I spaced out.
I feel like the fact that a character called the Night King exists is not something I would call a spoiler, especially when what we're talking about is, gosh, do you think the White Walkers might have some kind of a leader that we'll have to deal with at some point? No, that couldn't possibly be something that would happen.
Of course not. You're crazy, Christiana. I don't think that Viv is saying it's a spoiler either.
Oh, I know.
It definitely wasn't.
No.
My whole thing is that it's the people have gotten, like, I am dead set against somebody, live tweeting exactly what happens in an episode as you're watching it. That's really not fair to people on other coasts because, Twitter, there is no spoiler space, whatever. You can't scroll past unless you just don't read anyone's tweets, and then why be involved in social media? But there are people that are so panicked over spoilers that they go to the extreme, and then they create this controversy, and that's what this whole thing is. It's a created controversy.
Kind of what my point was.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I wanted to mention that, because it's just like, what are we even talking about?
I'm sorry, Viv, if any of that came across like I was saying that we shouldn't talk about it, or that I know you were just bringing it up, but I guess I was just sort of so eager to jump on the idea that I disagree with the people who are saying it's a big spoiler.
Even whether it's a spoiler or not, the whole discussion is tedious. It's Seth Meyers is quick becoming one of my favorite celebrities because he keeps making these little jokes about people that cry spoiler and cover their ears and run away, and I'm really digging that because it's pretty much the way I feel about it too. Stop reading, stop listening, or you're spoiling yourself.
Well, and also just one of the things that is fun about a great TV show, especially for the people who like it enough to be watching it live, is they want to be able to talk about it. And if just because you haven't bothered to see something yet, now, again, I think there's some room for discretion, like Nunny was saying, actually live tweeting in a way that people can't avoid at a time when some people couldn't possibly have managed to see something yet. That's bad form. But again, when we're talking about something like this, it just starts getting silly, and people who are so dead set against hearing anything about it, they're the ones that they are making other people's enjoyment less because they aren't able to talk about something they've experienced.
Yeah.
Preach it.
Yeah, that's why we played a clip from him earlier, and it's really true. There is a period of time that has to happen. It's only kindness, and I think a lot of us learn that.
It's like what we're doing here. We try to avoid book spoilers to the extent that we can, and only talk about what's happened on the show so far. And I think that's entirely reasonable.
Everyone about Sir Pounce. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you are such a bad person.
Oh my God, that was worse than giving away.
I tried to stop
wedding.
you. I was sitting there saying, "They're gonna do it maybe next episode." No.
Fine.
So let's move on. We have fully gone over this whole thing, the whole kerfuffle, which I wanted to do since we didn't want to speak in generalities and people not understanding. But we did bring up the character that may or may not be a Night King.
Yes.
And what he did to baby. So I don't care about rape and stuff as much as what happened to that poor little baby.
No, fuck that shit.
What he did to babies.
All the babies.
I'm just amused by the way you put that. That's all.
So again, talking about. Go ahead, Nutty.
I was counting the spires. I'm like, how many spires are in Stonehenge? Okay. There's 10 here. Okay. That has nothing to do with 7. It's not a prime number. It's not 12. And I'm trying to come up with significance, and I'm like, it's just a set. Move on.
Well,
that's how many they had.
I've done that from time to time. Every time the White Walkers have left things in a pattern, or like the burn setup for Khaleesi's big birthing of dragons and all that stuff, I've always looked back and tried to figure out what those patterns go back to, and I have no idea. I think it might be one of those that maybe somebody knows, but maybe it's just...
Yeah, I think it it's fun to want there to be some additional layer of complexity and everything, but I think sometimes it's really just about that's what the set designer thought looked cool.
Sometimes a cigar is just a cigar.
Big
So
Dennis.
does anybody else want to see the little playpen with like little blue-eyed babies that are
No.
ranging from,
Yeah, I
from
did-
baby
I did
size
just
to like,
wondered,
20
where-
years
where's
old
the,
type thing?
No,
Yeah,
no, we don't
White
need to see
Walker
that.
Daycare Center.
They have done enough, and I tell you what, after raping Cersei on Joffrey's dead body, and after doing whatever the fuck they just did to that little baby, I'm really getting kind of pissed off, and I think they need to tread a little lightly. I'm saying this, which is saying a lot. I'm a huge fan of the books, but I'm getting a little pissed off at every week getting punched in the throat again.
So all of the White
Don't mess with
Walkers
them.
Craster's kids?
How could we possibly
I
know?
don't think all
I'm
of
just
Nah,
putting the
I don't
question
think
out
they're-
there.
because
yeah.
Possibly
Craster hasn't been having kids since the last time,
that, yeah.
So yeah, is it possible that the however many they show sort of out of focus from baby point of view, off in the distance, are all of them Craster's kids in different ages? Is there super grow formula that brings them to that age? We don't know.
Would there be a
But
rush?
I,
You know,
yeah,
well,
there's that. I mean, again, and one of the things about this is that we are in show new territory as far as
Yeah.
this goes, and it's
So
interesting
that's worth
to
saying. Like, I was talking, rolling my eyes about calling it like a big spoiler or something earlier, but it's certainly true that we're seeing stuff that we have not seen in the books. That's definitely true.
yes,
Gigi,
there
what
was
the heck?
simmer down, Holyfield. Calm
sorry, I
the
keep
fuck
knocking
down.
things over.
I I didn't get the impression that we were supposed to believe that all of them were Craster's kids so much as I just got the feeling that all we were supposed to take from that was that that's maybe how the White Walkers reproduce in general, is by taking and changing humans. Maybe and it's not even necessarily always infants, although it seems like that might be a preference or something they like. But I didn't get the impression that it was supposed to be all Craster's kids as much as just that is what has been happening to Craster's kids.
And maybe they don't have a choice because they're
Yes.
only giving them boys, so it's not like they can reproduce manually. Because they only have boys.
Yeah, so
Maybe if they got a
yeah.
girl once in a
You know
while,
how they're
they wouldn't have to
reproductive.
steal kids. Exactly. Maybe there's
That's,
two
you
ways to
know.
reproduce.
Those White Walkers just need to get laid.
Yeah. They're just
Oh,
just
But
nice
All of
guys.
Westeros' problems.
Yeah, but we've established through just sight that we have these zombie-like creatures that are, and from the very beginning of season 1, you had the little girl that was dead on the tree, and then she was
Oh yeah.
became zombie walker type thing.
It's true, and she was
and then we
definitely
have-
because we've seen the whites, the WIGHTS, the frozen zombies, don't have those blue eyes the way the girl did, and now this baby did. So that seems like that's a other / White Walker thing as opposed to a frozen zombie.
Then we have had several scenes from season 1 where you had the much faster feral walkers that kill the guys right at the beginning of episode 1 and season 1, and then the same type of creature that takes the baby from that John sees in the distance, which looks very different than the old man guy on the horse, guy on the
Horse
dead
jerky.
horse looking guy. Yeah, so it's much more establishing the different types of others and walkers and different things. So I mean, it's good to see. It sort of did come across to me as okay, a little bit more of tying back to what I was talking about a couple weeks ago about does the show have to have a big baddie that everybody can rally around as far as, oh, we hate this person like
Boss fight.
Joffrey, and I'm not saying that's why they did this, but it's like, okay, we have this nebulous enemy that's out there wandering around in circles, not quite getting to the wall, but is on the way chasing the wildlings. But this gives even more focus on what that could be as far as evil and powerful and what have you. So it's I think it was an obvious nod that they needed to give it a little more focus, not just have it be this thing that's out there like is in the books. So
They really haven't. I mean, there's been attention paid, obviously, but it just doesn't seem to me like they have built up just like the constant kind of simmering point that you had with the others in the White Walkers that I felt in the books anyways. It's more of kind of like, and now we're in Westeros, and now we're with Dany, and now we're with Joffrey, and now Joffrey's dead, and now we're looking at White Walkers, and now we're at Castle Black. It doesn't seem like they've been able to portray how serious that is. So I'm kind of super interested to see what they do with this. As long as they don't fuck with any more babies, it'll be all right.
Well, and I think the other thing is, too, that one of the things that's so great about this series just in general is the way it keeps setting up classic fantasy tropes that are so ingrained that we hardly even recognize them as tropes anymore, and then subverts them. Just, like think about Ned, who is clearly set up to be this good guy hero character and then gets killed. And, so that's one of the things that this whole series does is it keeps setting up all of these classic fantasy tropes, for example, like the big evil baddie. And then so who knows what's actually going to happen with that. Maybe it's actually going to subvert that. It's not going to turn out to be anything like what we're expecting. Who knows? Maybe he'll turn out to be the good guy that helps us fight against the Lord of Light or something.
Maybe.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe.
Yeah. I do think that something
He'll be
I was
the one.
talking to my friend Kevin about
White
is
Walkers are just misunderstood, man.
That the show has not done a very good job of sort of representing to people that haven't read the books, at least to my friend's view of this, is that he is very confused with the idea of, okay, you've got the wall, you've got 100 people there, or whatever the number is. You've got the wildling that's supposed to be 100,000 of humans coming to the wall to try to get through because the others and the evil menaces are chasing them or right behind them. And then you have, okay, Craster's Keep, which is somewhere right in the middle of all of this. You've got these people, or some White Walkers over here, and where are all these people? How close are they? When are they going to arrive? And it's something that it's part of the whole ominousness of things, but it's also partly you don't really get a good idea geographically, even though you got the map at the beginning of the show of really what's going on, where are these people.
I think they can't because they're fudging it so much. They can't show us in a concrete way because then it wouldn't make sense for things to take as long as they need them to take.
Right.
I think it's a valid complaint, though. I mean, but I think that's why they can't make it more clear. Because, I mean, I remember hearing, the before the Red Wedding scene, but in that episode there was a whole bit where Rob is actually just looking at a map and kind of explains this overall strategy he's talking about with Talissa, and I remember reading a whole bunch of people that said, "Thank you! I had no idea where any of these things were."
Exactly.
And so and I think they, it would be helpful for them to have a scene like that, or, where they just say, okay, here's where all these actual parties are, and in relationship to each other. But I think part of the reason they can't is because they are actually fudging a bunch of that stuff. And I'm not even really complaining so much as I think it's a reality of they're more focused on having the story unfold the way they want than in terms of having it make logistical sense.
Yeah. Okay. Does anybody have anything else with the final scenes?
Do you want to read Sheriff Bullock's Q&A there?
About earlier Viv had mentioned Hope, and he wrote, I think Hope and Game of Thrones are an anathema to each other.
Mm-hmm.
I'll stop watching and reading right now then.
Yep. And then he also wrote, I cannot believe John was so articulate in this episode. Has he been taking courses in public speaking at community college? Where did this Jon Snow come from? Even I was ready to say my vows and go beyond the wall with him. Oh, Captain, my captain.
Torchmasters, it works for everyone.
He got laid.
Toastmasters, that's it.
Yep.
You've got game now.
Yeah.
Yep. He does.
What I will say, and I would never tell anyone else that they should dislike a movie, but Dead Poets Society pushes some buttons with me that
Ooh.
make me have a very visceral reaction to any reference of it, and so I just seeing that "Oh Captain, My Captain" sort of set the hair on the back of my neck.
Wow.
Which I won't go into
Really?
it because
We're
it would
going to
be
have
a
to talk about
whole
this
rant.
some night.
But,
We'll have to talk about this someday.
But so, but
I
certainly,
see
anyone
a
who,
Balticon discussion out of this.
anyone who
Fireball.
watches Dead Poets Society and really likes it, I'm glad you like it. I'm not going to ever tell anyone else that they shouldn't like it. I have real problems with it that I would be happy to discuss at another time.
Wow. You are,
It's gonna be fun.
as always,
I'm a
Christiana,
little punch drunk right now.
you are just like, you have opinions that I've never
That's
heard
funny.
anybody say
Okay,
before.
we're gonna
We're gonna talk
jump
about
out
this
here
game,
because
girl.
we're way over time. 2 hours and 40 minutes here, and
Almost
we
1
only have
o'clock.
4 people on the show. So good God.
Only. Got 4 awesome people.
So
Only.
I did want to say there were a couple musical things. The ending theme being the main theme, and just this completely bass baritone, whatever you want, low register, very evil, ominous sounding was cool. The thing that made me laugh though was the scene where John is making his speech. Speaking of his speech, and he's asking who will go with me, and they have the little thing where people are standing up, and they have this little major chord, very, punching that. Oh, here's Grand standing up, bong, and then ta-da, and then Locke comes up and is this dissonant minor
Yeah.
chord that, marking him as, oh, the evil one is standing up. It was like one of those too on the nose
Well, it
moments
was also
that
just
made
one of
me
those
laugh.
things where, like, how could there be any suspense of whether he would stand up or not, given that this was exactly what he came here to do, and we know that.
Right.
So,
But I did
It's their
like
version
those.
of like Darth Vader's theme music for when he walks in.
yeah. Now that said, I mean, I really like all this stuff with Locke up there, with the Night's Watch. I mean, I think that's good stuff, and there's lots of filler here, but I think it's so far it's good filler with a couple of just the finer details are a little forced, but just the overall arcs they're doing are fun.
Okay, so we had a contest last week. I'm gonna have to rewatch, but just to make sure I had all the references. Did anybody hear any references to dragons? I did not. So
well, there
I
was
had that at 0.
not really. I mean,
I
there's
don't know.
the 3-headed dragon on Danny's flag on the harpy. That's
No, that
scratching
doesn't
nuts,
count
I think the
for
closest
me.
we can get. So
No.
I didn't
So-
even look. I just know they didn't have any live action dragons.
Yeah, but no character actually said the word about dragons, so I'm not. I thought Olenna was about to when she was talking about almost marrying a Targaryen, and she saw his face and his, whatever, however she described his face. I thought she made.
Verity
she might
face.
say- yeah, I thought she might say something about, I don't care how many dragons he might have had, I wouldn't go
Yeah.
marry him or something. But
The only place that might have been said is when Danny did her intro kind of thing, or whenever they talked about who she is.
I don't think
But I
she
don't-
did even then.
I remember Breaker of Chains. But I
Well,
don't
they
remember
did.
Mother of
They
Dragons.
did. Grey Worm did call her Mother of Dragons at one point when he was talking to the other. Sheriff Felix says, "Sorry, Guru." That's okay. That's okay.
damn you.
I
I
kind
know.
of really only mostly brought it up just because I acknowledge that it's kind of funny that
Sheriff
I
Bullock,
have that
we've learned
reaction
what
to it.
we've all learned is that Christiana someday will break your heart, just like George R.R. Martin.
As far as the references to the North and Beyond the Wall, I counted 4 actual references. Let's see. I'm trying to remember. I wrote a note here, but anyway, there's the 4 that I know of that I caught, but I will rewatch. But if my numbers are correct, then the winners are. for the North, it would be Christiana, who had 3, and for Dragons, everybody picked at least one, so nobody would have won that. So we did have Tim Dodge actually as did the survey and he was over on both. So he said 10 references to the North and 3 dragons. So sorry about that. Next week, I also want to say for our personal host contest, we will not, because of the rapiness of the last couple episodes, we will not be doing boobs any longer. I am protesting boobs. Not that I don't want to see them on the show, mind you, but we won't be doing them as a contest.
Very interesting.
But
Good choice.
yeah. So next week we have plotting in King's Landing. Dany, some stuff with Dany that we know of just from the description. The name of the episode, Nutty.
Oh, the name of the next episode? Hang on, I didn't look it
It's
up.
actually I have it, but usually have it, and I let you say it. But it's called First of His Name.
That was it. I forgot it all.
First of His Name, which you might be able to deduce what it might be about. So what should we have as a contest? I think, since at least from things, John embarks on a new mission is the other description from the thing. So I guess deaths is a good one to do, since we should have some fighting going on. What might be a...
How about dire wolves this time, since we had dragons last time?
I tend to not want to do ones that we see something in this episode, because we tend to not see them in the very next episode. I was just thinking...
I was just going by the description PG.
How about the mention or citing of the word crown?
Oh, okay. I was going to say how many congratulations, but there you go. That works.
like with something lighter to contrast the deaths, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, crown could work, especially since I think the clip from next time looks like we might get Tommen's coronation, so there's going to be probably some there. Of course, we also thought with the royal wedding that we'd get some named food dishes.
Yeah.
Although that just actually reminds me,
dishes in this episode.
There's a comedian named Paul F. Tompkins who's really funny, and he has a bit where he's talking about how one of his many part-time jobs that he had, he actually worked in a hat store that, in addition to various baseball caps or whatever, sold a bunch of novelty hats. And he said on not one but 2 separate occasions he had people come in and say, "Hey, I'd like to see that king hat." And he's like, "King hat? You mean the crown?" It's like, there's a word for that. Are you saying you don't know that?
I want that king hat.
You want the king hat. So,
I think Christiana
won't be surprised if next time, there are no actual mentions of the word crown, because everyone just calls it the king hat.
King hat, yes. How many references to king hat will we have next week? So ratings for the episode. Did Chooch give us a rating, Viv?
He gave, I had it right there. Oh, 8 out of 10. 8 out of 10 guards on Tommen's door.
There you go. That's a good one. I like that reference. That was one of my choices.
Oh, wow.
That's really awesome.
How about Christiana?
8 out of 10 variations of Littlefinger's schemes.
Ooh, very esoteric. Nutty.
I'm gonna give it 7.5. Interrupting Sir Pounces.
Oh, cock blocking Sir Pounces.
Cock blocking.
Cock blocking Sir Pounces. That would be mine, but Nutty just took it.
He's a pussy.
See, I feel like there was never going to be any direct action happening in this first meeting. And so I feel like he was more like ice-breaking Sir Pounce.
I agree.
He allowed them
or wingman.
Yeah.
I like
wingman
that.
Sir Pounce.
Did you say yours? Did you give your rating, Viv?
I don't really have one. I couldn't think of anything clever.
Is
but
this
like
a 0? Is this a 0?
No, it's like a 7 out of a 10. I just can't think of anything clever because migraine.
Okay.
7 out of 10.
Mine would
Viv is
be
mad about babies getting hurt.
yeah. I will give it 5.5 out of 10. Slaps across Jamie's face with a hand of gold. So
Ouch, you. This is
Wow.
your lowest rated episode.
I just had a lot of things that I thought were lazy in this episode,
Yeah.
and you know, I thought visually there were a lot of really good things and really good acting, but I think there are times that we're seeing more and more where they are writing themselves, not writing themselves in a hole or in a dead end, but they have to make things happen because they're doing things in certain ways and they're not doing it in the most I don't know, just satisfying ways, let's just say. And I don't want to keep using the term lazy writing, but you know, I just think it could be more satisfying with, you know, how do we get this character here? Oh, let's just write this throwaway line, or you know, things that we've already talked about. So I'll go through it. But yeah,
I actually agree with you, PG.
Thank you.
Yeah. It didn't bother me as much as it did with you, but I think you're on the money.
Agreed.
Thank you very much.
So that gives us a cumulative, or rather an average of 72% for this episode, making it a higher rated episode than last week's.
Oh, it totally was for me.
Yes, you went
But
from
I'm changing it to
74% to 70.
4.
No, you gave your scores. You don't get to change it after I give you the average.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I want to thank everybody. Again, we do this live every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. or 9 p.m. Eastern Time. 9 p.m. Wednesday at 9 p.m. on Wednesday. And we have lots of stuff over at specficmedia.com besides the video and the audio versions of the episode. You can find links there. We're also doing the memes every week. Miss Nutty collects things that she sees and people send her and does a cool post with lots of GIFs and links to cool things. We're doing the Eye of Noob, which is, yes, I did a video. I actually recorded another video and then had computer issues, so I released the text for my views of the wedding, of the Purple Wedding. And we'll do another one this week, so we'll get back to video as soon as I can. We have the Eye of Noob, which is my friend Matt, who is a non-book reader who writes humorous, in his own way of writing his views on certain episodes. He comes at it a little more negatively, as like he almost wants to quit the show every time he writes one, but then there's something that keeps him coming back. So it's a fun read as well. So come stop by specficmedia.com for some of that stuff. And of course, we've mentioned Christiana and her 77 podcasts that she currently has.
Not that many.
Okay.
74.
No more than 50.
Because I just finished it, and other people have recommended it. Patrick E. McLean's The Merchant Adventurer, just finished that. I would recommend that over at Patio Books, or the print version over at Amazon. Go check that out, called The Merchant Adventurer. And that's all I had for this show. So thanks for watching, listening after the fact, and we'll see you next time on Beyond the Wall. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.